Me. Thank you.
All right, all right.
Okay.
MashaAllah.
We are live, I think.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Salaam alaikum, everyone. MashaAllah. Seliyahay, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Meesha adduunka joogtidba subax wanaagsan, galab wanaagsan, habeen wanaagsan. Waa Dadaal podcast, Muna and Ubax. Today we have very interesting topic. Waxaa idin haynaa wax aad iyo aad iyo aad maaragtay loo soo diyaariyey oo qurux badan oo waxa weeyaan for us by us Soomaali kusii dar yaa maanta waa ogtiin sheeko waxaan idin haynaa aad u fiican laakiin before aanan maaragtay gelin programkeena dee waxa weeyaan furashadeena maxaan ku furan jirnay muna this is gonna be interesting dalkan yaa iskale baa ku furnaa waxaan rajeynaynaa one day inaan dhahana annagaa iskale yaa
One day maaha annaka iskale cidina
well
lama laha.
we have to be inaan noqono with like a affirmation or adag yeah
Inshallah. Inshallah. One day.
inaan noqono with like
Aynen kale evet. Hey.
doonaya maasha allah this is waxa weeyaan ilaahay idinkiisa one day waxa weeyaan soomaaliya oo wada baraartay oo guulaysatay oo israacday oo ma dhaha haddii kale lagu qabsan doonaa anyway muna how are you
I'm fine. How are you?
maasha allah you kind of become quiet for a minute what the hell what's happening
Maniga.
oh I just
I'm getting ready to Mukhtar.
oh you are
Mukhtar.
preparing yourself yeah
I'm
who do we have maanta muna
MashaAllah, Mukhtar.
our
Waxaan haysanaa. We have a guest, but before that, let's introduce ourselves. This is the Dal podcast. Kusur Dawada is a platform to raise awareness, educate the community, promote change, and celebrate all kind of success.
and success comes in many forms and shapes we talked about
Yes. Noocyo badan buu noogu jiraa. And
MashaAllah.
waji kaliya ma laha. And yes, Marka, it's your host, Dr. Muna Osman. Muna Wahanahay. I am a nurse practitioner and entrepreneur, and your host today. And Wahan Ugudbinia Walashay and my co-host Ubah. Go ahead.
I am Ubax Warsame, aka Arawelo. Dad badan ay jecleen Arawelo waa waxa la yidhi nama naga reebtida lagu dhaha laakiin waxaan dhahay no that's magacayga ha ii diidinina anigana waxaan ahay Ubax I'm the co-host of the Dal podcast maanta waxaa idin haynaa interesting waxaan idin haynaa barnaamij aad iyo aad u qiimo badan hostigeena maanta waxa weeyaan walaalkeen Abdurashid Mukhtar Sharif, uh,
Welcome.
aka the mind behind Nomadic Hustle. Inshallah, maanta wuxuu noqonayaa barnaamij aad iyo aad u xiiso leh.
Mhm.
And we're gonna know who Mukhtar uu yahay maanta, inshallah. This is gonna be amazing. Waxa weeyaan, we are so excited. Aad iyo aad anigii munaba muddo aan maaragtay kasoo wada hadlaynay and to have him inshallah in uu barnaamijka nagala qayb qaato. Marka maanta waxaan fursad u helnay in aan walaalkeen aan baranno oo la sheekaysano. Yaa waaye Mukhtaar, haddii ilaah yidhaahdo, ayaa maanta aan baran doonaa. Dad badan waxaad garanaysiin Nomadic Hustle host inuu yahay ana founder. Marka laakiin he puts people on the high seat. Asagaa mar walba dadka maaragtay soo fariisiya. Waxaa la yidhahdaa maanta kursigii Mukhtaar baa lagu fadhiyaa maanta baa la dhahaa, laakiin maanta isaga ayaa wuxuu ku fadhiyaa kursigii dadaal. Annagaa
Masha
marka
Allah.
maanta insha allah chance u helnay inaan wareysano. Marka mar dhow baan aan asaga uu noo soo geli doonaa haddii ilaah yidhaahdo. Muna haye, how have you been? Ka waran isbuucaagii?
Wallahi, it was a busy week, but alhamdulillah, we are here. I'm so excited. I can't even, you know, tell you how much I'm excited because I always watch Mukhtar, you know, all the episodes, right? But
Huh?
now to bring him to this hot seat, I'm so
MashaAllah,
excited, and I know we're learning a lot. Tune in, community.
mashallah,
Dadka nagula jira, si bingareya, si shargareya. las
mashallah.
las inaan iscaawino oo aan wax ka barano because he was
Absolutely.
doing this for a long time, and today we're going to learn about his whys, and we're going to dip a little bit, a little bit deeper. Marka, let me introduce him, or you're going to go ahead
No,
first.
aniga I just want adaa introduction-ka oo actual introduction adaa soo binaysid muna insha Allah. Laakiin
Mhm.
aniga waxaan rabaa inaan idhaahdo aniga Cabdirashiid Mukhtaar waxaan ku bartay Seattle, Washington markaan soo degay 7 years ago, almost 7 years now. 7 sano ka hor markaan magaaladan soo degaan bartay. Wuxuu ahaa walaal Soomaaliyeed oo community-ga aad active uga ah oo youth-ka ayaan ku bartay weliba uu la shaqaynayay. Wuxuu aad ugaga hadli jiray STEM iyo dhallinyaradeenu inay ka qayb qaataan adduunkan horu maraya oo xawliga ku socda, oo maaragtay codingka in ilmaha la baro dhallinyarada. So wuxuu hoostgarayn jiray brogramo wuxuu hoostgarayn jiray uu dhallinyarada yaryar ee 10 sano ilaa iyo 18 sano ama ka weyn uu maaragtay ku wacyigelinayo community-ga uu leeyahay halkan ayaa loo socdaa maadaama uu asaga fiilka ku jiray. Marka waxaan ku bartay aniga teenageraa ii jooga, so my son who hadda wiilkayga oo hanad oo hadda ah wuxuu ku jiraa STEM, computer science buu hadda bartaa. Meeshii codingka loogugu soo bilaabayay uu qayb ka ahaa oo aan geyn jiray meesha uu maaragtay Mukhtaar uu ku hoosgaraynayo. Waxyaaba badan oo community-ga loogaga qayb qaadanayo howlaha bulshada, arrimaha bulshada ayuu also ku jiri jiray oo anigana aan ahay waxaan passionate ku ahay. Meelahaasaan isugu iman jirnay, waan wada sheekaysan jirnay community-ga xaaladaheeda, maxaa waxaan laga qabtaa, maxaa sameyn. Marka howlo badanaa isku baranay maasha Allah. Marka aad iyo aad ugu faraxsanahay in uu maaragtay waddadii uu asaga xaaray annagana annagana nire we taking the same journey after him insha Allah. Wuu nagu dhiirigeliyay annaga xataa dad annagoo kale dadaal podcast team in oo aan samayn karno platform oo women driven ah oo women yihiin waxa maaragtay dadka oo founderska ah, women for women by women annagu create garaynay. Isagana waxa weeyaan community-go dhan maasha Allah oo weliba dadka maaragtay professionalska ah ayuu uu maaragtay u create gareeyay. So we're learning from him. Asaga waxyaaba badan ka baranaynaa maanta. Muno, you do the
You
honors.
said a word. Waxaa tiri wadadu noo xaaray. Does that mean he paved the way to
Yes,
us? Uu noo
yes.
xaaray. Allah, Somaliga, that's not a good word. Let's change it.
Waddadii noo xaaray annagana qaadanay weeye marka.
marka مختار شريف وغني عن التعريف بعربته يدازان وقف لي يقانو مقالة يعني كساتل كل حجرة community. But I'm gonna give just a snapshot of his accomplishment and who he is. Mukhtar Sharif is a software engineer and a tech entrepreneur from Seattle, Washington. Seattle, yoo-hoo.
Yes.
He has worked with some of the most recognizable companies in the world, including Microsoft, Starbucks, and T-Mobile. He is also the founder of Snappy, a member of SPN, the largest Somali professional network organization in North America. Most recently, he founded and has been hosting the Nomadic Hustle podcast, which aims to shed light on Somali success stories across the globe and engage in conversation to enlighten our youth and inspire our communities to grow. And the last sentence
Mm-hmm.
in every episode, I
You
Mukhtar, literally, I
you
know it
remember.
by heart.
MashaAllah. That's beautiful.
So, and with
Let's,
no further, and introduction, we're gonna bring him to
yes.
the to the
We-
screen. Hey,
So
Mukhtar.
welcome, Mukhtar. Hello.
Thank you, thank
Assalamu
you, thank
alaikum.
you. Wa
MashaAllah.
alaikum salam. I'm happy to be here, Dr. Mona and Obah. Thank you guys for inviting me on to that podcast. And I'm excited to see how this episode goes.
MashaAllah.
Oh
Looking
yeah, me too.
forward. MashaAllah, Mukhtar. So the whoa. And had the muna markay dhahaysay. And from Seattle, I was like, waana laga xaday. Aan soo dhihi rabay. Laakiin haddana waa isceliyey, ma ogtahay?
Oh yeah.
Now, I'm
He's
still from
now in,
Seattle, so
he's
I don't
in
live in Seattle
Minnesota.
anymore.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sadly for reer Seattle, xoogaa Minnesota dagaal yar oo hoos hoosaa naga dhexeeya oo waxaan idhaahnaa ciddii noo soo kacdaba waxay naga xalaan ciddaas marka waa iska qabanaynaa mar dhow insha allah waa kaala soo noqon doonaa that's the fight marka soo dhawow
Inshallah.
kusoo dhawow dadaal podcast and we're very maaragta excited maasha allah maanta aadan ugu faraxsannahay inaa platformka nagala soo qayb gashay barnaamijkan muddo ayaan kasoo shaqaynayna oo kasoo wada hadlayna anigii muno to have you on board maasha allah waqtiga hadduu noo saamaxay alxamdulilah wadadii aad jeexday haddaay waxaan idhi wadaduu noo xaadhay marka muno waxay
yeah,
tiri
check.
yaa hala
That's
bedel
better.
yaa
That's better.
muno
Waxay
muno
tiri
waxay
wadadu
rabtaa erey kale
xaaday.
wadaduu noo
Wallahi,
xaadhay
I was like, Muxa.
wadaduu
Wow.
jeexay waa isla meeshii ayaa
Yeah.
annagana maaragtay tallaabo dhinacaas u qaadanay marka mukhtaar waa walaal oo mar walba aan anigu ogahay in haddaan taleefonka qaado aan dhaho mukhtaar waxaana sidana he's always there and he always answer whatever questions marka we appreciate you mukhtaar your expertise and your talent and maaragtay you community driven human aad tahay dhinac walba dhalinyarada dadka waaweyn dhinacay noqotaba we appreciate you as a person marka maasha allah I am glad maanta inaa aan hot seatka adiga ku saarnay muddo badanaa dad saaraysa hot seatka yeah we were like we're gonna put him on the hot seat marka soo dhawow mukhtaar maasha allah
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, Obah. I appreciate you and Dr. Mona and the work that you're doing. We've known each other obviously many years, and I know obviously your son Hanid, who came to some of our coding programs. I'm happy that he's getting into the tech industry. We've done a lot of work in the tech industry. You yourself has helped us out with some of the events that we used to do in the past for the youth in Seattle. So I'm more than happy to be here today.
Masha Allah, Masha Allah. So, dhalinyaro badan in ay galaan maaragtay in that tech industry ay galaan lug buu ku lahaa Mukhtaar because ayagoo yaryar 10 jir I remember some of the students that we used to maaragtay bring from hooyooyinkooda kasoo wada jirnay 10 jira ugu yaraa I remember 10 years and up ay ahaayeen marka the idea waxay ahayd expose them ayagoo yaryar si ay fikradda ula qabsadaan and maasha allah guul badan laga gaaray tomorrow markaa aragtid dad sida hanadoo kale ku jiraan tech industry oo computer science meesha hadda isagoo kale markuu shaqo helo waxaa leeyahay remember codingkaa kugu horeeyey mukhtaar qayb ka ahaa soo ma ahan marka waxaa ku leedahay waxyaaba badan blessing badan aad dhabar kasoo taabatay
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
masha allah
That's a blessing. Yes. So Anugu, I'm so curious, Horta, because the tech industry, you with the community, but I want to know more about you. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit of your background?
who's Mukhtar?
Who's Mukhtar? Yeah.
So generally, Obah knows I don't like to talk about myself, even throughout the platforms and the things that I do on the internet. I'm very private. My own personal life and my family and my children, really private on the internet. So I'll give you guys a quick glimpse. I grew up in Boston. Shout out to, Boston. I was there as a kid, went to elementary school in Boston. We were resettled there. It was great, but as you know, when you get resettled in the inner cities, as happens with a lot of our Somali families, you end up in some of the worst neighborhoods in the United States. So our family moved, when I was in middle school to Maine. So which is I could only describe Maine as civil rights era America. It was living in Maine in 2002, 2003, 4. It was a very interesting time. So you know how you have the Black Lives Matter movement happening right now and the protests. We had that in 20 years ago in Maine. It was just to give you an example. My middle school had a KKK rally in front of it. Right. So just to tell you what type of environment that the Somalis in Maine were dealing with back in the early 2000s. But alhamdulillah, we lived there. As you know, Somali, you don't care whether there's a KKK rally. Muhammad Wali was out there with her big hijab and her arute, so she don't care who's there and who's watching and who's bothered by her presence. So we kept it moving. And by 2007, that very city who didn't want any Somali people was named the All-American City. It goes to only one city in the United States per year gets that award. That's because of the economic revival that Somalis did. They rented out all the commercial real estate. They bought apartments and homes. It was pretty much a dead place, right? A lot of the Adans were really old, right? It was a milling town. They had manufacturing. They all shut down. So when the Somali, when they came, they rejuvenated the entire economy of that city. And now they're happy that they came 20 years ago. But it took a lot of work. And moved to Seattle in 2009. Alhamdulillah, my entire family moved there. That's when I got introduced to tech. Got married in Seattle. Alhamdulillah, I have 2 children, 6-year-old Layla and 1-year-old. Actually, my son turned 1 yesterday.
Wow,
pandemic baby. Shout out to all the pandemic quarantine
right?
babies.
they are different kind of babies, very smart.
It took them a long time, but I can overhand. So, but yeah, alhamdulillah, he's got a 1-year-old. Recently, I have a huge family, as do many Somali people. 7, up to 16, 17 siblings. And alhamdulillah. And recently, I relocated to Minneapolis, Minnesota.
MashaAllah. That is just amazing. Yeah, Minnesota. He's in Minnesota. Still, I'm like, okay, yeah. Let me. We're actually coming, inshallah, for the upcoming event. Dr. Mona, we're gonna see you there.
So do I. So doing it, inshallah.
We're planning, inshallah.
So you're talking about how you moved from these cities and how these you experienced all this different type of I want to say events. How did that help shape you today? Seeing these did.
So here's the thing, guys. Right now, there's a lot of people that are shocked by the racism in America, right? I can't believe, some of my coworkers in the tech industry, like, I didn't know it was that bad. I had no idea. And again, my question is, where have you been the last 300 years in the United States? The only way you don't experience, if you don't experience racism, if you don't know what's going on, it's because you live under a rock in this country. So what it did for us, in middle school, when you see the KKK, you see the real evil behind, what this country was founded on and the experiences that African Americans had. One, you appreciate the work that African American community did, to pave the way for us to be able to come in this country and have rights. And then you experience some of the things that their grandfathers and grandparents and elders experienced, and we experienced that firsthand. But living in that time in Maine, it just teaches you not to stop no matter what. Doesn't matter, because what happens is, you go to school and the Adan counselor is going to tell you, you probably are not going to be good. You're probably not going to become a doctor. Why don't you go into, I don't know, another field where they believe it's a little bit easier, right? So what my older sister was told, you probably are not going to be a nurse, right? So why don't you go do something else? Why don't you study philosophy, or why don't you study something easier? And then she graduated #1 in her class 4 years later, right? And the person who told her that was in the front row of the graduation, and she got an award at that event. You know what I mean? So it was a
Mhm.
lot of. It taught me specifically never to listen to any naysayer. You can
Yes.
never. Anyone who is negative, you have to tune it out.
Mm.
This person is projecting their own limitations on you. What they believe that they can't do themselves, that you can't do it. Right. So we got a lot of that from specifically, white folks in Maine at that time,
Mhm.
counselors, from the government, the establishment, everybody telling you as a Somali that you can't, right?
Can do it.
And so that attitude is, I think, personally what helped me. A lot of people that grew up. Anybody who's watching this, shout out to anyone who lived in Maine. They all know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely, mashallah. So it shaped you, and this is what maaragtay anaga as ani munaba, we are mothers who you have young children, but anaga we have older kids, teenagers, young adults. So when we talk to them all the time aan la hadlayno waxaan idhahnaa ha dhegaysan ciddii ku tiraahda waxaa ma qaban kartid ama waxaa ma samayn kartid ha kuu noqoto markay ku dhahaan waxaa ma samayn kartid wax adiga ku siiya awood gooniya oo aad markaas bilowdo haddaadan dadaal hore ugu jirin dadaal kasii darankaad ku jirtay oo tiraahdo waa ku tusayaa like prove them wrong oo kale I'm gonna show you inaad samayn karo taas iyo ka badanba marka ka dhiga aan dhahnaa jaranjaradii aad ku fuuli lahayd meeshaad u socotay markuu qof kugu yidhaahdo waxaa ma qaban kartid and that's waxaan kula hadalno marka waa wax qurux badan in oo maaragtay dadka haddana dhegaysanaya oo dhalinyaro badan ay ku jiraan oo kuwa annaga waalidka u nahay ka mid yihiin in ay maqlaan mukhtaar waa kana halkaanu kusoo koray saasuu kusoo koray waxyaabahaasaa soo maaragtay food saaray waxyaabahaanu soo arkay khibrad waxaanu u leeyahay dad intaas ahaa saas ku yiri abaayo kaleeto waxa lagu yiri oo la yiri waxaan ma samayn kartid oo ay tustay in not only inay samayn karto but inay ku qaadato bilad sharaf ay ku qaadato oo qofkii ku yiri ma samayn kartid uu ka ahaa qof ka mid ah dadkii kursiga ugu horeeya fadhiyay oo daawanayay qofkii shalay ay ku lahayd ma samayn kartid waxaan oo maanta qaatay shahaado bila sharaf ah intay samaysay wixii marka taa waxay dhiirigelin u tahay dhalinyarada dadka yaryar iyo waaweynba xataa dadka waaweyn waxaa laga yaabaa dad hadda hooyooyin annagoo kale ah inay maanta isleeyihiin xaggeed wax ka bilowda ama maxaad samayn kartaa inay arkaan marka in ha dhegaysanin qofku yidhahdo waxaa ma samayn kartid mar walba dadaalkaaga bay ku xiran tahay marka it's great in maaragtay aad nala sheekarayso taas maasha allah
Yes, and you know what imka into hadlayay Mukhtar, he was talking about Maine, but it's in every city in America, to be honest. There is always limitation. How many kids anigo, like I go to school myself and my kids going to school, because when we were talking, we decided running start, gonna save her time. When she went to the counselor, she said, I want to be in running start. I have a plan. This is what we're doing. I don't advise you. Try AP classes first. Don't do running start. No, me and my mom, we planned it out. And how did you know about the running start? Then she told him, my mom is a college graduate and we planned it all. Then he backed off. But Arurta Marwalba, I don't care what city, it's always there. You're not qualified for this. Why don't you do this? Oh, my son counselor too. She's told what made my husband a little bit upset. My son couldn't do computer science. He failed. Basically waxay ugu leedahay inankaygi baa ka bixi kari waayey marka kaagani muxuu ka baxayaa, right? So then my husband told her flat out, please do not share that experience or your personal experience. Don't share it with my son. It's none of our business. Haddana markuu yimi and u yeedhay, she repeated the same word, even though he told her specifically, do not share that with my son and don't put that in his mind. Way samaysay. So that's showing you that it's not only men. Arurtenu always we are under pressure. African American they were dealing with this for the last 300 years. So they paved the way, the way for us. They know how to advocate. And they don't know how to advocate. So what of the things help you, Mukhtaro, as a young kid to advocate for yourself? That's what I'm coming.
I think there's one element a quality that the elders, the people who came to America at an older age, you know what I mean? Similar to our
Mhm,
parents, people came here that teenagers, people that came
mhm,
here as, in their 20s, 30s. The quality they have that the kids growing up in this country lack is in the adeg, right?
mhm,
The elder Somali in the adeg. You cannot tell a Somali mom no. Nin adana hana cannot tell her no. But
mhm.
the issue is our younger kids, they fell victim to the same thing that the African American population has, where
Mhm,
the system beats them down to the point where they lose their confidence. They're
Yeah.
constantly being belittled. They're constantly being told that they can't do anything. So
mhm,
that process, Marka, makes them a little bit in the adego kasara, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
When somebody comes here a little bit older, they don't believe anything. I mean, I came here around when I was 4 or 5, but even at that age, I remember being told to come into America that like the Adan, the white man or the Adanka are not the bar, right? They're not the standard, right? They're not. Whereas in some African countries, there is this inferiority complex.
Mm-hmm.
Somali, I believe to some extent it was opposite. And I think so. What helped me, I think, first of all, I'm very hard headed personally. Just my
mhm,
tabi'adahan. I don't listen to any negativity from anyone. So that helped me tremendously. You need to first believe in yourself. You have to believe that you're capable of it. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else is going to believe in you, right? So the thing that helped in me is I believe I can achieve anything. So when you have that mentality, it all starts in your mind. When you have the mentality that you're able to achieve anything that you want, then no one can tell you no. No matter how many times you fail, this person will not convince you to stop. And then also, Dinta tells us to reach for the stars. Islam is not a religion based on being mediocre, right? Dinta Islam can never
mhm.
tells you to like go for a C minus, C plus. When you look at the Sahaba and the early Islam and what they accomplished, I mean, they were leading their time, right? They had the best in every accomplishment available: science, math, technology, medicine, military, everything that at that time a Muslim was equated with, the highest
Yeah.
standard of whatever they were at that time.
Mhm.
So when you combine in the adeg with your faith, being based on excellence, I think that allows you to go as far as possible.
Masha Allah. Somalinimo. And I think Somalinimo, right?
Exactly.
Somalida inta waxa waaye, that's one thing, right? So that comes useful baa leedahay. And that inuu Ilaahay naga dhaliyay Somali
Hmm.
became something or tool ah oo
Yes.
maaragtay kaga hortagtid waxyaabahaas oo kale. Masha Allah. So it's amazing and hadda Munana waa idin dhahaysay and how she advocated for her daughter and her husband also likewise ugu advocate gareeyay his son in waalidiinta marka ka waran oo aanan ka warqabinba waxaasoo dhan inay dhacayaan because waalidiin badan saasaa ku dhacda like alxamdulilah and we're coming from place of privilege and dadkeenan oo fahansan oo inta iskuulka taga la dagaalami kara oo ilmahooda oran kara waxaan laguma samayn karo laakiin waalid badan oonan garanaynin taa ama la soconin ayaa jira marka ayada laftigeeda marar badanna waan ka hadalnay insha allah and later before we end the session waan ka hadli doonaa what kind of advice aa sii karto insha allah as somebody who as a young kusoo koray halkan and what you will say to the parents insha allah hadhowba aan ka hadli doonaa muna go ahead
Yeah, no, and marka madax adayga, which is true, markaad leedahay indha adaygana dee gidaarka waan dhaafi karnaa haddaan Soomaali nahay cidinagama qaadayso. But for our kids, like you said, when like the only thing I can think, ciyaalkeenu halkan kuwa ku dhashay ama kuwa ku koray yaraan ku yimi, aad yaraan ugu yimi. Like you said, they make them doubt themselves. And then they like, oh, they know they are teacher. That trust in Mika now, we all vocal about what's happening. And the kids are more involved, with the Black Lives Matters and the movements. And hadda ayay ku leeyihiin, this is my right. But for some people, they don't know where to go from there. They don't know, ciyaalkeena especially waxay ku oranayaan, do you think you know more than the teacher? Do you think so? Adigu waxa tidhi anigu waan madax adagahay. But I'm curious, as a kid, what 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 did you reach, and what did help you to reach to that mother? I'm gonna make it. Yes, it's your personality, but what other kids can learn from you at that age that they can copy you and say, Mukhtar talked about that age. Yeah, وما but this elements, factors help me to get to that, get that strength.
Yeah, so I need a couple of things. One, that's God given, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sometimes He instills some things in you that you yourself cannot get to. So I'll acknowledge that part. Combination of my father, which is a huge, piece of, obviously my father was there out my entire childhood. He's still here now, alhamdulillah. And just he was pushing me 24/7. So he had already set a high standard for us, for me specifically, and also encouraging us to always ask questions. My mother telling us, like I said, and not putting any inferiority in us. So I'll give them the credit for that piece, to train us early on that, qafkan, that they are a teacher, yes, but they're also human, right? They can also make mistakes. And then me, I mean, if I was to give some advice to a younger person, middle school, elementary school, is to ask questions, right? You have to always ask questions. You have to ask why. You have to challenge your teachers. That's something I used to always do. I used to always get in trouble for it, obviously. A lot of detention by somebody. But it helped out. You have to challenge on everything that you think that there is something there, right? If the teacher tells you, hey, you could do this or you can't do this, or you should go this route, you have to ask why. Right? You have to ask why is she recommending this. And then you have to really just understand this is your teacher, right? This is not an expert at whatever you're talking about. You cannot ask your art teacher about computer science. Right? Your counselor, even, this is a counselor. He has no idea what tech industry is. He has no idea, what's involved in becoming a doctor.
Yep.
He just looks at you, and based on his opinion, his limited understanding of who you are and what your abilities are, he'll make a recommendation. Right? So just understanding that this person, take everything they say with a grain of salt. You don't have to take every advice. This is not wahi,
Yeah.
This is not revelation from God, right? So you have to always understand that this, at the end of the day, this is their opinion. Their opinion cannot dictate who you are and where you're going to go in life. So that's really, I think, what I've lived as a young person. But I've also just thought about, even when I was in middle school, the consequences of my actions at that age. Understanding that you cannot fool around for 5-6 years. You can't fool around for all of middle school, because they will tell you that middle school doesn't matter. You'll hear this a lot. When you're going to school, they're going to tell you, oh, 7th, 8th grade doesn't matter. High school is the thing that only matters. And then when you get to high school, they say, oh, it's 9th and 10th, it don't even matter. Right. So this is what our kids are hearing. They're hearing that 9th grade, 10th grade doesn't really matter. You can just play around. But when you get to 11th grade, then you have to start taking it seriously. Right. But teaching young kids that at 5th grade, 4th grade, that their decisions that they make at that time, the decisions you make in middle school, are going to dictate what college you end up in. Right. And the college you go to is going to dictate the jobs that you have available to you. And so literally your entire life.
Yeah.
Right. Your entire life could be changed. Yes, exactly. Based on who you are in middle school and high school.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah,
that's
it
kind of my
does.
mind at the time.
Yes, I just want in a Madayari, especially in the Medina, in a Arkan, somebody who made it, came, study elementary here. Like we can preach all we want, like you don't know, you didn't come from here. You're not like عروتي waxay ku yiraahdaan, what, that's your circumstances. We live in a different time. But somebody who grow up, wallahi, they ilahina afka u dhameeyay, they حجة when they discuss something with you. I never used to discuss stuff like that with my parents. So أنا عامصة because I'm like, oh my God, he's only 18 and we are musi. So I just wanted to hear from somebody who was there at the same, similar, not the same, similar. And when somebody like that tell them, Adigu, you can make that decision for yourself, you can own it, and it's gonna follow you. I think it will resonate more than just preaching and talking from expectation, um,
As a
that we
parent.
put yeah we put up on those kids, without even sometimes putting any effort to help them along.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
So
marka and in that case mararka qaarkood waxaan idhaahdaa like muna sidaa tiri yes from annaga markaan waalid ahaan ilmihii ila hadlayno waxaa laga yaabaa inay dhahaan adiga circumstancegaaga weeye laakiin adigu meeshan kumaadan qaadanin elementary school
mhm,
or middle school, so you don't know what it is like, or high schoolka oo howlihiisa waa ka warqabtiin. Markay sidaas oo kale yidhaahdaan, markay ka maqlaan qof sida Mukhtaar oo kaleeto oo maray ayaga tallaabooyinka hadda marayaan, then markaaseeto it kind of clicks and makes sense for them. Waxay leeyihiin he understands because he's taken those steps. And marku ayaga ay ka maqlaan qof oo meesha soo maray, then si different ay u maqlaayaan hadalkiisa, then markii asa waarid oo preaching lagu arkaayo oo adiga aad maanta dhan khudbad dheer haysid oo lagu leeyahay maba fahmaysid, maba aadan marinine, maxaa adiga ka og tahay, oo aad leedahay hadda 18 years old wuu ku aamusinayaa. Basically ilmaheenna waxa weeyaan waxay ku korayaan meel ay ayaga ka hadli karaan waxay doonayaan, ay siday doonaan u hadli karaan.
mhm, mhm.
Versus annaga markaanu ayaga agekooda ahayn, waalidka wax kasta si kastoon u saxannahay, afkeenna waa xirnaan jiray, ma aanan ku celin karin hadal, waayo waxayba nala ahayd dee sidii loo soo koriyey waa qalad inaad waalidka hadalba ku dhahdid. Laakiin iyagu waxay leeyihiin anigu qalad ma samaynayo, but I'm telling you the truthku ha qaraaraato hadday doonto, qaraar kastoy tahay. Markaasaa adiga afka qabsanaya aswaad waxaa leedahay anigu saa ma samayn jirin. Laakiin really it's also learning for us as a parent oo halkan ilmo ku korinaya, ina annaga laftigeena we're unlearning what we learn, oo ahayd waalidka lama hadli kartid. Yes, way la hadlayaan. Annaga experiencega hadda marayna oo ayagii markay nala hadlaan oo naga yaabiyaan mararka qaarkood, adiga laftigaaga waxaa leedahay waa saxan yihiin, they are right, qaladna ma suubin, laakiin annaga waxaan soo baranay aan unlearn ku samaynaynaa. So it's an experience wallahi as a parent too. We're going through the challenges in ilmaheenni markaan annaga xataa la dhaqmayno, iska illow xataa waxyaabihii oo banaanka iyo iskuulka iyo the challenges ay face garaynayaan. But as a home and the challenges that parents and youth and young people ay face garayaan waa another maaragtay topic dhan oo mar dhan laga hadli karo keligeed ayaaba ahba, and raising children in America oo weliba teenagers. Marka maasha allah. Mukhtarow, school iyo sidii aad kaga soo gudubtay caqabadahaas iyo high school iyo elementary school iyo middle school aan ka hadalnay. And what about jaamacadda? Like when you get to jaamacadda, you went through all of this, waa gudubtay jaamacadda.
waxay aan kaa dhex galo intaana
Ayib.
jaamacadda gaadhin, how imka Mukhtar intuu noo sheegay was the bulk of it, right?
Yeah.
But I want to take Mukhtar a step back and say life is not always ma'an. Life is not always, there is to show the people that what kufaysa, what kaisa. Is there internet حتى قاعدين جامعة when you were deciding to what college you're going, when you were in high school, sometimes that obstacles that you felt that you hit the ground and then you got up again? Did you have any experiences like that? وح أدمر يعني I
wax sidaa rabtay uma soconayaan
Yes.
intaa istiri aad tiri then how aa uga gudubtay oo kaleeto,
Mhm.
caqabad ku soo food
Yeah.
saartay ood istiri wallahi maanta waan si fiican aan u kufay basee u kacayaa.
So personally, I think anyone who knows me knows I'm an extreme optimist on high, right? Sometimes to like delusional level, right? Sometimes I even ignore things that are عقبات مركي كود عادة. If I get to the point where I actually just black it out, so I can focus on a solution, so I can focus on like how to get out of it. Even when I look back on my life growing up and any things that might have happened, like I mean we lived in some of the worst neighborhood in Boston. You know what I mean? We had a neighbor upstairs, Muslim family, African American family. My sister's best friend upstairs, and her father was killed in front of our house, right? And so going through all of those things and some very negative life events that have happened, even that neighborhood, I look back at it, maybe it was a blessing living there. Maybe there were some lessons that we learned from that time. Living in Maine was a very difficult time. But then as a kid, you look back, you're like, man, it was fun because we didn't live in the inner city. We had places to play. It wasn't dangerous, right? You could go outside without your parents worrying about you getting hurt. So there's always, basically what I'm saying is there's always two ways to look at it. عقبات والمحاجر, there's a positive and a negative. And going back to the deen, there's a hadith that says the Muslim or the mu'min is ajib, right? Meaning whatever good that happens, you say alhamdulillah, you thank Allah for it. And whatever bad that happens, you're patient, and then you also get rewarded for it at the same time.
And you say
So
Alhamdulillah for it.
alhamdulillah, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm trying to as I'm like actively thinking about things that happened, maybe, I mean, there's times, for example, where something you really wanted doesn't happen. Like you were praying dua for all of this for your entire life. So I wanted to actually go into business school. That was my main thing out of high school. That was my number one goal. And then I couldn't go into business school, right? I didn't have the right credits or the right classes, and they told me to wait a couple of years and go a different routes. Obviously, you're 18 years old. I was devastated at that time. But now, it turns out business isn't even what I wanted to do, right? I would have never been in the tech industry. Had I went and got a business degree, I would have been, working at a bank or some corporate job that I'm sure I would have hated. You know what I mean? So on the surface at that time, I didn't get into the school that I wanted. It was a failure. You're thinking of all the options, and then that's the exact time we moved to Seattle, right? So it's right after high school. Now you have to start all over. You have to make new friends.
Yes.
You have to apply for a new school. Then I went from a 4-year university. Now I have to go to a college. I have to go to a community college for 2 years now, because you can't transfer directly unless you plan ahead. And Somali family, we don't plan ahead. We decided to move within 1 week.
Yeah.
The way our family decided to move, we just said, my parents are like, "Do you guys want to move to Seattle?" We said yes, and a month later, we lived in Seattle.
I love your
Right,
parents.
so
They asked you. That
Well,
never happened.
yeah. Oh my God.
إلهي خير هسي والدك والله وابلغ ويدي ما شاء الله إلهي يكون
they
دايم.
gave us options. They said, "You want to move to Seattle or Virginia?" So we almost moved to Virginia because we had some family there. So I mean, even moving to Seattle. So you always think about your life and the decisions that you made. Those at the time, it's a small decision. It's a very small thing, right? Seattle, I've never been there before. I've never been to Virginia, so it didn't matter to me where we went. Right? There's colleges in both places, but then in the grand scheme of things, you think about how that impacted every other aspect of your life for the next 10, 20 years. That one decision that you make. That one small decision at that time alters the entire course of your life. Who knows what I personally would have been doing at this time if I would have even went into the tech industry. If I would have, obviously, I wouldn't have met Obah and Dr. Mona and any of you guys at this point. I would have never been in Seattle. So that my main thing is I believe so their Islamic foundation. Iman code is very important.
Yes.
You could have all of the knowledge. You can have all of there's a lot of very strong people, non-Muslim, they consider themselves strong. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how strong you are. If you have no foundation, you have no connection to a purpose, and you don't have no connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you don't have there isn't that thing that keeps you going, right? A job and money cannot keep you going, right? Family at the end of the day cannot keep you going, because your kids are going to leave one day, your parents are going to leave one day. You know what I mean? So family itself is it's great, but it's not it's not the number one thing that's going to help you survive any issues in your life. So for me, what's allowed me to that foundation, I give the credit to my parents. Their number one focus growing up was the deed and the Islamic foundation. They could care less about academics. I mean, my dad wanted me to get straight A's, but at the end of the day, if he had to choose, having a solid Islamic foundation, going to Duxi and learning about deen versus getting a secular education, he would have went for the deen, right? So I think that was the biggest thing for us.
MashaAllah. So the foundation, having that foundation of dinta ayaa waxay ahayd base wax walba oo aad samaynaysay and at the end of the day kulligeen meesha u noqonayno weeyaan as you said family waa ama hala kala guuro ama geeri ha timaado you know it's not forever but qofka inuu haysto that foundation and something bigger than what you go back to basekas wallahi waa very important waa absolutely I agree
It's
with
not only the deen, mashallah. If you, if you hear what Mukhtar said, it's the both. He have his parents' support. They installed on, in him, but that confident, دينتينا ولو راعي. Marka something is building on the other is building in the other. Marka Somali waxay qofkaasi dabar buu leeyahay. Like qof adag. Because it's not one thing. Because even يعني caruur badan imka Soomaalideena inta badan taxfiid Qur'aanka waa lagu daaya, right? But taxfiid Quran without understanding, without applying it at home, without parents who understand and support, and like he said, that's bigger than just Deen Foundation. It's just taking what the Deen saying and applying it. For him to say, "Hoy, يعني وانا لو ودي, you want to go to Seattle?"
you don't see that all the time
aniga weliga legmo nimka caruurteeda aniga waa iska yaabay war isla weliga kuwaan odhan meesha ma doonaysana tagtaan. I'm just like, this is what we're gonna do and this is how it's gonna happen.
yeah so,
So
they have
yeah,
for
so
them
let's
to feel
that
that caruurta
it's
weydiyaan
more than found. It's so many factors together. Marka anigu waxaan kusoo noqonaya as Somali community, since we always talk about, we want to install these things in the community and take it back. The importance of the parents' involvement and building the trust. Ilmaha yar hadduu guriga cod ku leeyahay u taagan yahay, dabaddana cod uu ku leeyahay u taagan yahay. diintiisiina haddaad dhistay marka always imka like casa an takrahu shayan wahuwa khayrun lakum. Ilmihii yar aayaduu garanaya, but if he doesn't understand what that means, like when you look back and you say, oh, that was not for me, subhanallah, I'm glad that this is where I end up. That's exactly what ayaddaas sheegaysa. Mar waxbaad necbaanaysaa hadhow along the line, down the line you're gonna understand that ilaahay uu kaa fogeeyey because kumuu qorin. He have a better thing down the road. So I think it's a combination. Marka ahamiyadda aabuhu leeyahay, ahamiyadda hooyadu leedahay, ina caruurta la dhiso. It's like, if we don't build them right, the guryaha imka guri haddaad dhisad without a good foundation, wuu dhacay somehow. So I think we need to not 3 lines, 10 lines under that. Diinta with the family support.
Yeah, foundation.
And foundation, yes, that's the base. It's not only deen. Ilmaha ina malcamad loo diro oo diintii ana guriga laga isticmaalin oo ana caruurtii lagula dhaqmin. I think it's not gonna it's actually gonna confuse them. What's the point, right?
The parents have to be living what they're telling their children. It doesn't make sense to send your kid to Tuksi and you yourself are ignorant of basic Islamic principles and values and foundation. So I think I give, like I said, I give a lot of credit to my parents and how they went about it. They obviously are very, very religious. They are, and they were at that time. And, having my father, alhamdulillah, active father in the home, and having him constantly remind his children about what their purpose in life is and how to interact with other people and the manners that they're supposed to have. Being present, I played basketball in high school, so my father would always go to basketball games, and those small details you don't realize when you're a kid. Like you don't understand the impact they have on you as a child, but when you become an adult, you understand like how it shaped you, to be who you are.
That's amazing.
How did you discover your love to tech? How did you choose tech when you came to Seattle?
Well, I wish I would have done it sooner. There was a kid in my high school that was studying Java, which is one of the programming languages, and he told me about it, and I thought it was a joke. We actually used to make fun of this kid for doing it, because that time it's like, he's a nerd, and it wasn't public. This is 2006, 2005. Like tech wasn't as big as it was today. So if the only way you're going to find a tech class in your high school is you have to dig it up. You have to go and find it, talk to the counselor and ask. So if you don't even know how to ask, that kid's reason he wouldn't ask is because his father was a software engineer, right? So his dad told him to go look for this course and study, and he already knew what he was going to do. But for those of us who don't have parents and those professional jobs, then you just have to find it by exploring. So I found it by just taking a random computer science 101 class. That's really where I started. I've always obviously been a big gamer. Wasted a lot of time playing games as a kid. I still play. I mean, I have Xbox now. Every once in a while, I still play. My daughter wants to play. You know what I mean? Back then, it was like you're wasting time playing games, but then you grow up and you want to be able to create those games. So that desire of seeing video games, trying to learn how to create them. I took my first class. That's why Ubah knows we always try to expose technology to kids at a young age, because you might expose 100 kids to it, and then 5 of them decide to go into computer science, right? 95% might not want to do it as a career, but the 5 that do, that's life changing for them, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I started off. I just took one class, and then I realized, that's what I wanted to do.
MashaAllah. So then, like you said, waa run haddii boqolkii arday ay 5 ka soo baxdo, success aa gaartay. Nacam waa guul. It's a actually success. Exposing them ayaa taas u sahlaysa. Waayo, just like you said, inankii aabihiis uu ahaa software engineer, he knew because aabihiisa ku expose gareeyay. But idinku maydan haysanin. So how do you know? Unless xilligaas aad la yaabaneed. Dib markaa ka ogaatay waxaad leedahay, I wish I knew. Marka haddaanan anagu aanan ilmihii aanan maaragta ku xiriirin, haddaanan xataa expertiga ahayn, haddaan dad expertiga le ku xiriirino, and that is where maaragtay carruurta inay helaan mentorship is important, oo weliba dhalinyaradu, and waan ka hadalnaa within the community, mentoring children or young youth or young adults, and dadka hadda tech ku jira sida idinka aad programmada ugu soo diyaarin jirteen Mukhtar oo kaleeto, hadday noqoto caafimaadkii, hadday noqoto other fields in your education, whatever field jira inay helaan carruurtii mentorship, the importance of mentorship. And I would like to touch on that also. Adiga, I know you've mentored ilaa haddana waa mentor garaysaa. What do you think the importance of mentoring youthka, mentorshipka uu ilmuhu u keeni karo, oo to noloshooda sidii wax uga bedeli karo iyo meeshay ka aadayaan, meeshay joogaan?
Mentorship, I think one of the most, if not the most important thing in our communities, when you're building community. And I think, just as an example, when you might have a conversation, for me, sometimes I have the same conversations about tech with literally hundreds of people that I meet online, I meet in person. And for me, after telling someone this 200 times, it just becomes like autopilot, So I'm just giving the information at this point, and I'm hoping it's going to help them. But you don't realize the impact that it has on this person. Something that I think you think it's so basic, right? You're like, it's such a basic concept in your mind because you've been doing it for 10 years, you've been doing it for 20 years. It's so small, so simple to you. But that young 18-year-old kid, it's like life altering. It's like a light bulb moment. He's thinking, wow, right? I can't believe I never knew this. So I think for us as adults, we forget that this young person is learning. They haven't experienced a ton of things. They have no idea what you're talking about, right? And for us being, somewhat experts in our field and doing it for so long, it's so simple. So I think that just looking at each young child, especially teenagers, especially teenage Somali boys, they need a lot of help. They need a lot of support. They're very, a lot of them are lost in terms of what they want to do. Then you have things that are competing, right? You have the system and the way it treats them, the educational institutions and the way it treats them, the colleges, the police, and all of these other factors that are already negatively impacting Somali boys, right? And then with that, it just highlights more how important mentorship is. All of that negativity, you need a positive voice. You need someone, if somebody wants to study tech, you need someone to go ahead and take that kid's hand and tell them, listen, whatever you need, like if you need help with a class, if you need direction on where to go to school, if you need, resources on how to find a job, we have to do every single thing in our power as people who are, in the fields that they enjoy and at a position that you could advise somebody. Mentorship is like it should be one of the number one focuses in our communities.
MashaAllah.
That is so
Wanna
true.
wanna
Yes,
go ahead?
I agree. I agree. Mentorship is very important, but it's it's not accessible. We don't have a like imika marka imika and like big brother research. Like there is some organization or some communities that organize that, but I feel like in our community, have you seen something organized for the youth? wiil iyo gabadh horta wiilasha inta aad sheegto dhanna waxa u raacaya annagu xataa inamada yaryar marka la korinayo waan gabnay like waxaan ku gabnay. And I always say this, hablaha markan soo korinayno, we give them multitask. We teach them from a young age to do schoolki, guriga ka shaqee, reerkii wax u soo qabo, all that. All, so many, shaqada dibadda ka soo shaqee, reerkii caawi, right? In a mother, lakin, why they pamper, it's not even pamper, it's the culture. Inan walaalka wax u soo qabo. يعني he go to that school and come home, maybe play that game, walaashii waa u soo qaadaysa. So I think even us, we need to not, I don't want to say treat equality and I don't want to go to that gender, war, but in a mother, in a lasiyo, an equal opportunity to multitask, expect more, give them more. Ayago yaryar, like you said, introducing them and the certain choices dabadda inuu ka soo shaqeeyo inuu reerka wax la qabto marka isagii markuu dabadda loo diro hadhow is not going to be confused. Oh well, you're asking me to do 2,000 things and I never did this before. And and I seen kids saying this is just stressing me out, I'm stressful, and they shut down. And I think the way we bring them up also have a factor. It's a factor. It's not everything, but it's a factor. So I don't know if we have a Somali organized way for the youth. I didn't see it as
that we are
I
aware of.
seen yeah, I seen an individual, like group doing it
Mhm,
for a
mhm.
while and then but like wah, like a scholarship, a
So
fellowship,
jireen
a soo jirino socda.
mhm.
Did you see anything like that, whether in Minnesota or Seattle?
Seattle, I'm not sure if it existed. I know in Minnesota, there's several organizations that are youth focused that match Somali mentors with Somali students.
Mm,
It's very
okay.
active. I think Seattle, there is a huge opportunity to do that. If somebody wants to start an organization that focus solely on mentoring young Somali men and young Somali women, matching professionals and other people in the community with mentees. So I'm not sure if I think some organizations do some aspect to an
Mhm.
extent of mentoring, but I don't think if that's their mission, their full mission is probably a wider service to the community.
Yes, and that I know what you're talking about, but that's also a narrow interest. You have to know somebody, or somebody can tell you about that organization. Well, they do this part if you approach them this way and connect them in a way, but not something that we advertise. So I think that's something we really need, especially
Yeah.
meelahan kuwa weyn nahay, Minnesota.
There's a room right there. نعم if qof uu rabo yiri Mukhtar inuu ka faa'iideysto oo uu ardaydii iyo dhalinyaradii iyo dadkii professionals isku xiro. So the need is there waa ognahay. And there's somebody hadduu jiro nacam there is that room qof waa ka doonayo inuu ka faa'iideysto. So
I
waa arrin
think.
annaga dhanna saaran and ma sahlana. And I remember hadda ka hor mar aan la hadlay, like you said, Muno, individual oo kale, maybe inay jirto dhalinyaro oo ku jiraan whether ay tag tahay or health aniga la hadlay. Specifically my aim wuxuu ahaa wiilasha inaan la hadlo, rag baan la hadlay oon ku iri ma laga yaabaa inaad an hour a week siin kartiin arday haddaan isugu kinkeeno oo anaga idinku xiriirino oo connectionkaas aan samayno. But as you said, waa individual wax ah. So we need something an individual ahayn, as a hadda uu mukhtaarna dhahaye, in a mission of a group or organization, or mission code and vision code uu yahay, to do that mentoring and connecting professionals with young people and matching them with whatever profession ay dhallinyaradan doonayaan markay high school weliba ku jiraan, maxaa rabaan inay sameeyaan, way og yihiin, then ku xiriiri qofkii.
Who better than Snappy, the biggest professional
There we
network?
go, right? Maybe Snappy will be
Yeah,
multi every state in
yeah.
ayaga ka sameeyaan. And Mukhtar has been for
Shout out.
years, so he has
Yes,
a lot of
shout out.
connections. I'm sure we're
It's,
gonna put you
it's
a little
not only
pressure.
Mukhtar. Mukhtar have a big group in that. So shout out anybody
Yeah.
who can take the lead. We will love to help
So
too.
that is a good segment. Now you are one of the founders of Snappy, so maaha, or you are the founder, or you are one of the founders. So let me clarify that.
So I'm the founder, but there's a lot of people that had the slow no.
Okay, so you are the founder, but now you have a lot of partners oo kula wadaan, because it takes far kaliya ay forma dhaqdo. So now waxaan rabaa inaan ku weydiiyo marka, it's a good segue. How did Snappy came about? Since adiga founder ka tahay.
So Snappy is part of a larger professional network organization that's called Somali SPN, Somali Professional Network, that was founded by a friend of mine named Abu Bakr. He's from the UAE, Somali guy, Wyatt. And they started. It used to be called the Somali Expat Forum. So in Dubai, they would, anytime Somali person moves to Dubai, they have all the same questions. They need to find housing. They need to find help with their job. They need to find, a lot of the same services. So they started doing connecting with each other and doing networking events in Dubai to connect Somali. A lot of people go to Dubai to teach. They go to Abu Dhabi to teach. There's a lot of teachers. There's a lot of health professionals. And it was a way to start connecting them. And, it got bigger over the years. In 2017, they opened a chapter in Australia. And that was founded by a friend of mine named Ahmed Ismail. So Ahmed started the one in Australia. He did an event and he invited me as one of the speakers. So when I went down there for the event, I saw what they were doing. It was a lot of great work, networking, the connections that was being made. I asked myself a question: why are we not doing this in the United States? Why is North America the only country or the region that doesn't have these events? So I came back in 2017. Like a month later, after I came back, we started Snappy. So that's kind of where it came from. And the thing is, when it comes to Somali professionals, it's a lot of people that they work, they're experts at what they do, but then they just go home after work, and that's kind of the extent of what happens in a lot of their lives. So there was this yearning that a lot of people had to connect with other Somalis, like-minded entrepreneurs, go-getters, business people, professionals, students. There was a need for all of them to kind of meet. So we started a Facebook group. For the first 2-3 weeks. It was only I think it was just me, Obah, and Shukri, and a few other people in that group at the time. And then one day, over 5,000 people joined the group.
Wow.
Right, and it just caught like wildfire. Everybody started introducing themselves, and then we started doing these events. And it was something that was missing within the community. Right, whenever you come to the events and people are able to connect and make relationships, and a lot of people got mentorship, a lot of people got access to jobs and references. A lot of young people got help with school and basic questions that they had, and so we've been doing it ever since.
MashaAllah. See how beautiful things happen. And it all came from knowing those two gentlemen from UAE and Australia, and you being part of the one in Australia and seeing what they do, and then figuring out this is exactly what we need. And intaa gurigaagii aaday iskamaada seexan ma dhihin, yeah, we needed cabdi baa samayn doona, macaasha baa samayn doonta, but waxaa dhahday I have to take aniga inaan noqdo, haddaanan anigu bilaabin yaa kaloo bilaabaya.
Take initiative, yeah.
Yeah. So that is
Yeah.
the key waxa weeyaan, qofna wax nooma keenayo, waa inaan anagu doonano. Taasay kutusaysaa also. And Snappy hadda waa ognahay, masha Allah, shaqooyinka Snappy ay sameeyaan, the connections, and how everybody knows about Snappy and how we connect in the community, and the events that Snappy has done, and we were part of it. And now conferences, and now the biggest one is coming up on September.
Yeah.
It's a yearly thing now. Dadka ay raadiyaan. I think last year, since Corona happened, it didn't take
Yeah, we didn't do
place.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we didn't do it
because
in
of
Corona.
Corona. But now I think everybody is like at the point like alhamdulillah, finally, it's happening. And from not only the United States but all the way in UK, friends uncle and they also might be coming for that. So amazing. It's now international, not only from different states, but some of our friends and Clubhouse ko wada hadlaynay now, the new platform. Aan ku wada
Yeah.
hadlaynay. They were saying, we might come to Minnesota. And we were like, well, make sure that you come in around that time if you're coming, because that's a place that you can see everybody that you connected on, all the different platforms in the United States. Marka, mashallah. And Muna, go ahead. I think Muna is trying in a su'al so bodo.
No, no, you continue. I was not trying to cut you at all.
So
You
another
know,
fiirinayna, and I know Mukhtar has a lot of things that he's doing, and we will not keep him along, but still we have a couple more things that we wanted to ask. One of the main things that I'm gonna jump to it, waxa weeyaan, you are also the founder of Nomadic Hustle and the host. And that is another interest that we have, and we wanted to talk to you about, since now we are the also a podcasters, and podcasters that we always learning from somebody who has been there before you. So
mhm,
how did you come to ina tirahed, you know what, I'm gonna become a podcaster, and I'm gonna
from
host.
tech to
Yeah,
Snappy to
yeah,
podcast.
to
How did that
podcasting.
come about?
How did that jaranjaro ku timid? Sidee baa nacam ku tiri, okay, time waxa weeyaan aan wax kala sameeyo? Or are you a man of like, I have to do different things, like challenge myself? Or there was a passion somewhere and it didn't take place then, and now it was the time?
So it's a combination, right? Personally, I get bored quickly. So every
Mhm,
year or two, I have to start something. I don't know what it is.
mhm,
I just enjoy the challenge of starting something new, growing it, and hoping that it succeeds and just working towards it. So on a personal level, that's just my personality. And I think at the time, I mean, we started. I started Nomadic Hustle in 2019, October, right? So before that, that same year, a few months before, you guys, as you know, Allah Harizal and Allah passed away in July 2019.
Yes. Allah yarhamah.
And really, when you look at the Somali content, right? When you go on social media and you see the content that's coming out from the Somali community, both diaspora and back home, as you
mhm,
know, in 2019, at that time, I mean, really, it was this tribal content, qabil,
Mhm,
people, to the extent that Facebook had to actually, like, it's actually a fun fact. Facebook had to hire an entire office in Mogadishu to
wow,
regulate the comments and the
mhm.
content on Facebook,
can you believe
because it
that?
was actually impacting people's lives. Like entire tribes in Somalia might
They
go
were
to war
fighting.
because of the
Mhm,
comments made on Facebook. So I looked at, all of the content, the Somali content that was being produced at that time was a lot of, honestly, a lot of nonsense, a lot of
mhm,
negativity, a lot of fighting, a lot of bullying, cyberbullying that was happening, and a lot of fake news, right? You have a
mhm,
guy in his truck reporting about events that happened. He's just
Yeah.
FaceTiming, and people believe him, believe it or not. Like that information gets
mhm.
to
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of different people. I mean, my mom would call me and she'd be like, "Did you hear what happened?" And I'd say, "Okay,
Mm,
Hoy, where did you hear it?" She's like,
mm.
"Oh, Hebel Hebel, Wakana, here's the link." And she would send me a YouTube link. It's just some guy in his truck.
Yeah. And
Just
he
some
has
guy in
no
his truck just
background.
talking about.
Wow, like
He's literally
nothing.
he's reporting on news on the ground in Somalia. He's telling you this and this happened. He's telling you, this person died and this battle happened and this thing happened in this region, and it's all
Mm,
fake news, right?
mm,
So when you look at and then you look at the English content, when you go on
mm,
Instagram and see what the younger people are consuming, right?
mm.
And a lot of it, I mean, a lot of young Somali men, they're putting out rap content. They want to be rappers. That's what they want to do. And a lot of young women were really into makeup, and every single account, every single young woman wanted to make a YouTube channel about
Tutorial.
makeup and tutorials. I mean, that's what they want to do in their personal life. That's fine. But when you
Mm,
look at society and how things impact people,
mm,
you look at I mean, you have a young daughter. how do these things impact young women when all they see from other Somali women and people that they look up to, influencers, if everything they see as a young girl is, if all you see is makeup tutorials, fashion, hijab tutorials, I mean, all of that's your entire timeline becomes fixated on this and the looks, right? And how people look and how they can look better and all of these things that are really superficial. That really impacts our younger girls at in a way we haven't even begun to understand it just yet. So I looked at it and I said, and then Hodan Lawan Harris is the only person creating positive content in English and Somali at that time. She was way ahead of her time. She was shedding a positive light on Somalia. She was going back to, different regions, Kismaya, Hamar, Las Ana, Gesa. She's been everywhere, all over East Africa, changing the perception of the country. She was highlighting entrepreneurs and business people and professionals here in the United States, in Toronto, and all these other places. So after her passing, then there was just a void of content. Really, there was much positive content, especially on Facebook and Instagram. And so yeah, that's kind of what pushed me to start the podcast and to highlight positive images of Somali people and take control of the narrative. Because when you go to Google right now, when you put Somali Google images, see what comes up, right? Every
Yes.
picture is a Kai with AK-47, pirates, terrorism, poverty. That's the entire narrative. They would have you believe that that's the only thing that exists about Somalis. So when I started the podcast, it was changing the narrative. Take control. Instead of people talking for you,
You're talking
you
for
need to start
yourself.
speak for your community. Speak for who you are. Don't let other people dictate who you are as a community, as a nation, as a people. So that's kind of the entire background behind how that began.
So, creating our own narrative is how it come down to. Instead of, just like you said, waa run Google markii la geliyo, waxa soo baxa images that they wanted to put out that narrative. But, Hodan Ilahi ha u naxariisto, may Allah,
Allah yarhamha.
grant her Jannah. She's an inspiration to all of us. And she's also part of, annaga xataa markaan ku fakaraynay, and to create this platform of the Dal podcast, she was our inspiration, and how she was changing the narrative and how she put out all the positive things, and then she was teaching the Somalia that others don't want to see. Maaragtay inay ku aad aragtid, they don't want you to see that kind of Somalia dhinaca ayan dadkan rabin, oo quruxda iyo wadanka iyo dadka iyo sida loo dhaqan yahay iyo wanaaga aysan doonaynin inaan aragno, ayay iyadu showcase ku samaysay in a very positive, amazing way. Masha Allah, ilaahay jannadii firdaws ha siiyo. So she inspired all of us. And marka Nomadic Hustle was creating that positive narrative, in oo wax annaga intuu qof noo hadli lahaa, annaga isu hadalno, annagu aanu tusno dadka waxaan nahay, that we are more than waxa la rabo in laga tuso dadkeenu inay yihiin, that we have different kind oo maaragtay professionals. Marka la dhahaano Soomaalidu dhinacaysan ku jirin maanta ma leh, but showcasing ayaa Nomadic Hustle ay usoo baxeen inay showcase garayaan dhallinyaradeenna, rag iyo dumarba, so that inay haystaan carruurtii waxay arkaan oo iyagii u eg, oo iyagii communitygooda dhexdeeda ka yimid, oo haddana dhinac walba professionka kaga jira. Marka masha Allah, so it was Snappy, and then it was the Nomadic Hustle, and how creating this narrative. So Muna, I think you were trying, and I would be so
No, I was going to comment on Nomadic Hustle. It's not only, following the way that Hodan was doing it. What you did, and this is my opinion, Mukhtar, what you did is you took the success people doing, and you chose topics that community u baahan yahay ina laga soo wacyigeliyo, ama inay ogaadaan the reality of it, not the media, not waxa la isu sheegayo, he said, she said. So waxa yani marka and the journalism, the journalist, the journalist, CPA, that that could let say, and hablaha, and you not only shine, you said you shining on their success, but you brought them and what they are expert on, say community you go faida. maxay sameynayaan inamadeenna jeelka maxay ugu jiraan yani every episode it's positive maaha bashing but you telling them these people know what to do what they do ka
Mhm,
barta ayaga
mhm,
follow them ayaga ka
mhm,
qaata ayaga marka you giving an alternative of the fake news
mhm,
right? You're giving al-
mhm,
alternative way to verify credible news. Yan dhegeysan kartaa, which is to me, it's like intaanad qofka ku oran waxaa samee. You showing them the way without even saying
waxaa
here is a
samee.
person. Yeah, and
Mhm,
and and that's one thing I took every time. Every time I'm dhegeysto qof, you know, I don't know. Anigu ilaa 33 baan gaadhay, so I don't know if that was the most the or there is more, but every qof aad keentay waxbuu sameeyey, yes isaguu ka faa'iiday, laakiin wuu ku dayasho mudan yahay.
mhm.
Given an
Wow.
example, it's done, it's there. So that's something um, we have to command and we have to say something. But inta anako ogno, you know, you're doing the nomadic. What's the next step? Because I see you always. So 2 years you so dhawaaday. What are you going to do next?
Yeah, good
That's a
one.
good, that's a great question. That's a great
Yeah.
question. So as you know, I moved to Minnesota. That's one of the next steps, right?
Mhm,
I felt like that move somewhat had to, I mean, personally, you know, it was great for me and my family, but also for the podcast, I felt like it was a more of a central location. So the
mhm,
natural progression for us was to get a studio. So now we have a studio in Minneapolis,
Mashallah.
and we are looking to expand the types of programming that we do. So we haven't announced it, but we're going to actually be doing a new podcast with a different group of hosts, and it's a woman podcast, so you guys are gonna really
that's
appreciate it. So we're
cool.
gonna so it hasn't been announced yet. We're gonna be announcing it really soon in the next week or so, inshallah. So we want
Mashallah.
to have more than one podcast, maybe three, four, five different podcasts, focusing
Mhm,
on different aspects of our not only our community but just the world. I mean, different topics, right? Mine is
mhm,
interview style with, you know, in talking about individuals and their stories and their successes and the struggles they had. We need
mhm,
podcasts that delve into different topics, right? So
mhm,
Mhm,
that's the other goal. We also want to do documentaries, inshallah. We
mhm,
want to
inshallah.
create more content. We want to give a, you know, more visual guide to who we are as a community historically. What have we accomplished? And really for us, and you know, we changed the name. The podcast is still Nomadic Hustle, but our platform is now just Nomadic, and it's really
mhm,
about, we want to archive our stories 100 years from now, 200 years from now, when people
Mm,
want to look back on what life was like for Somalis in 2020,
mhm,
2021,
mashallah.
right?
Great.
They could Google our videos, this video right now. Your great grandkids are gonna see it and they're gonna know, because we didn't have these insights into, to imagine what if you could look back 200 years and see what Somalis were discussing, right?
Amazing.
What people were discussing in their villages. It's
Mhm,
really powerful, and it allows us to control. Instead of Somalia had all of the English literature that is written about Somalia was written by white men
mhm,
mostly,
mhm.
right?
Yep.
So they put their twist on it, their version of history. You
Mhm.
know, they call our hero, you know, the Mad Mullah. You know what I mean? So
Yep. Yep.
they dictate what happened in history. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Yep.
for us is we're gonna dictate our history through
Yeah.
podcasts, through the same things that you guys are doing, through videos, through
Mhm,
pictures. So
mhm,
that's the bigger vision, inshallah, to take it to the next level and to have a much more digital media approach.
mhm. Mashallah.
Mashallah.
So my question that maanta dhan waxaan dhahay goormaa la gaari doona xilligaas wax weeyaan, since we talk about, you know, Snappy, we talk about Nomadic Hustle, we talk about what you're going to be doing inshallah coming future ka. I wanted to know, you know, since we are still new um podcasters, anigi Dr. Simono, and adiga meesha waad noogu horeysay, you have more experience. What will you tell your first starting markaa ahayd, like hadda markaa look back samaysid, what will you tell yourself, and as a new podcaster maxaa ku oran lahayd? What did you learn between then and now? and then maxaa
Yeah.
ku advice gareyn lahayd?
Number one thing, which I'm not good at right now since I've moved
He
to
froze
Minnesota,
for
is
a minute. He's
consistency.
coming.
Yeah.
You guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, go
We
ahead.
good?
Yes.
You're good.
Okay. So the number one thing that I think that really helps anyone new or current podcaster is consistency. You have to be consistent. If you tell your audience you're once a month, you have to come on once a month. If you say you're once a week, you need to come on once a week. Consistency is what allows people to respect the work that you're doing, right? You tell them something that you're going to follow up on it is number one, and just choosing topics that are relevant. That's people worry too much about themselves being nervous. They worry about how they look on camera. They worry about is they going to be received well? But I think with the right preparation, if you prepare properly, and the topics that you choose is not just something you find personally interesting, but you also have done research and you think it's going to have an impact on the people that are listening. And I think, I mean, even just go back to consistency. There has to be. So one of the criticisms, and I criticize our people a lot. I give them credit a lot. We are very short term in the way that we think and we plan. So most of us, it's just for the next year, for the next 2 years max. When you're starting out, if you're not planning on doing this for the next 10 years, right? If you don't have a vision for this thing to go on past beyond you and beyond, your availability, and if you don't have a vision bigger than you as an individual, then you're setting yourself up to fail, right? It's going to fall off eventually if it's connected to just you and your availability. So that's the advice for podcasters. I hope more people get into podcasting. It's growing a ton right now. We haven't even started to see the real impacts of it. I think there's still a lot of room for more podcasts and more people to join. And it's a way for right now, we're doing a video, but generally you could do audio podcasting. And some people are not comfortable on video. Some people just want to speak into a microphone in their bedroom, right? And somebody like that, there's an avenue for you. So like I said, consistency, choosing the right topics, choosing the right guests, focusing on the story and the quality of the conversation. You don't need $1 million camera. People get into this whole thing where they wait for enough money to buy the right equipment. You don't need the right. You could use your phone, use your laptop. I mean, right now I'm on my laptop. This is perfectly fine.
That's what we're all doing. We don't even own a camera. Can you believe it?
Yes. Exactly what I'm talking about.
You nailed it.
Yeah. Mashallah.
No, this is beautiful. Mashallah.
Okay, before we close, because we kept you a long time, but I want you to share with us something people don't know about you.
Like one thing or two things.
Two,
He doesn't.
I know he said it. That's
like
why.
to talk about himself. We know, but we're still pushing. Like we're like poking you. One thing that nobody knows about you that you're gonna expose.
One thing. One thing.
I have to really think about it. You guys are putting me on the spot. I'm trying to think. What don't people know?
Or a talent that maybe
don't give him ideas.
Like something we don't know about you.
I mean, it's so I actually lived in Egypt for like 7-8 months when I was right after high school. So during my first year of college, I left, took a gap year. My parents supported me on it, and it was a pivotal moment in my life. So that's one interesting. I literally left by myself. I didn't know anyone in Egypt. No one. Like we took a taxi from the airport. Like it was me and my friend. My friend was actually 2 years younger than me at the time. So it was. I think it was a life-changing experience.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to a lot of things about my parenting, especially my parents. From the time I was a teenager, they always trusted me, right? So they, for example, when my first time coming to Minnesota, it was a road trip, and I was 16 years old, and I just got my license, and it was 14 of us. We're going for a basketball tournament. The oldest person in the car was 19. Wow. Right. So I was 16. The age was between 16 and 19.
And you were
And
driving?
I didn't drive. I mean, I could have, but the 19-year-old was the elder, so he
Mm.
drove the car. أصدق أنا ده.
مختار
Wow.
عربي
So
مركا ما برتي
شوية أنا
شوية
أتكلم.
تتكلم مصري
أيوة
تتكلم
شوية. أنا كنت
كويس
هناك نص سنة، تعلمت اللغة العربية في نص سنة فقط.
ما شاء الله
Oh,
نص سنة تتكلم
good.
كويس ما شاء الله.
وبالعبطي أي.
That's one thing you don't know about him now. He speak Arabic. هكو حمل من
I
عربي.
speak enough. I speak enough Arabic to be dangerous.
Yeah, ما
Yay.
شاء الله.
Be
Just
careful
enough.
way. ما شاء الله.
Okay, one more thing. سورة أما آية قرآن you live by it. It's always
Ayat Quran that I live by. I think one. I mean, it's very cliche. One of them is "In Allah la yughayyiru biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim."
أنفسهم.
Mm.
Right? Allah doesn't change people, their conditions, until they change themselves. Right? And change begins within you as an individual, then you and your family, then your tribe and your city, and it goes out from there. I think a lot of us, we look at presidents, Somali specifically. Specific example, I mean, people believe, they look at Somali leadership, the presidents, the 6 or 7 presidents that we have,
Mhm,
and then we point at them and we say, this is what's wrong with Somalia, or this is
Mm.
what's wrong with Somaliland, or any of
mhm,
the other
mhm,
parts, right? And it's not, that's not what's wrong with Somalia. That's the thing that's wrong with Somalia, is the people that allowed them to be in power, right?
Mhm.
It is, leaders are a reflection of the people that they lead. So if you're looking at the leader and you think he's a horrible leader and he's the worst of the worst,
look back at you.
and look back at ourselves and how that this person
100%.
is representing ourselves. So I think that ayah is very important. Even look at, when you look at Islamic history, how Islam began and how it propagated. Muslims for the first 10 years were working on themselves,
Mhm.
right? There was no ahkam about not drinking alcohol, came over 10 years after,
Mhm, mhm,
right? A lot of the Sharia and a lot of the laws and regulations in Islam were made in Medina, which is, after 10, 13 years.
Mhm.
So that shows us that you need to work on yourself, your connection with Allah. You need to work on your principles, your values, who you are, get,
Mhm.
to a point where you're comfortable, and then move on to other things. So that's the verse that stands out the most.
MashaAllah.
Oh, I
That's
love it.
beautiful.
ما
That
شاء الله.
that is beautiful.
ما شاء الله. لا يغير الله ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما
Yep.
بأنفسهم. And the change start يعني ما يغير ما بأنفسهم وحوين معه. It could be even intention and a small step, and it would
Mhm.
lead you to the other. ما شاء الله. Go ahead وبح.
Absolutely. No, I think aniga and the questions I have
ويقل الشيء.
halkaasay kusoo
وبح.
dhamaadeen. And I think waxa weeyaan over an hour
Okay, so
and a half almost baan haysanay oo
كم ما
aan ka
ويقل
yaabnay.
الشيء وبحي.
Yeah. May maqlaysiin? Muna, can you guys hear
I
me?
can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. So frost baan noqday.
ها
Okay, hadda ma ka soo baxay?
ها.
I hope in anoo kala qalooca ku dhigin Farouska. But anyway, and Mukhtar, mashallah, and I think this has been amazing, maaragtay, and wuxuu ahaa episode, mashallah, and we appreciate you, wallahi. There's a lot of insights in maaragtay fikrada badan, and from being a youth, I think yourself to profession, and founding a couple of things or hadda maanta community and wax badan ka bedelaya, to all the way to Nomadic Hustle, which was, one of the biggest thing or nuggets day, and also to learn from you. And inshallah, what will you tell your younger podcaster ko markaa bilaabaysay, the tips that you give is going to be something that we can take, and inshallah, and we will implement anaga wax badan oo faa'iido inoo taraysa. And also the great thing is maaragtay, to have you as a brother who I can always pick up the phone and call if I need anything, which that's a privilege itself. Marka alhamdulillah, we appreciate you. We're gonna be seeing you in Minnesota, Anigi, Dr. Mona, both of
إن
us,
شاء الله إن شاء الله.
inshallah, for the big event that's coming up. And we'll be visiting your studio, inshallah, when we get there. I can't wait to see. I love the look and the nomadic look of it. It's a beautiful, how you guys are designed the studio. I love the colors and how everything looked, and it literally says everything about Nomadic Hustle, and what your vision was, and I can see from the studio how you guys envision that. Marka, mashallah, many more successes. I know you're putting out a good, amazing positive narrative, and communitygeena wax badan oo isbedel badan oo noo soo socdaa. Haddana waan maraynaa isbedelo badan oo dhinaca wanaagsan ah. We all are part of maaragtay campaign oo ah let's change the narrative in a positive way. Waa dadkii way ka daaleen waxyaabaha negative-ka ah ama waxyaabaha aanan wanaagsanayn oo ama la maqlayo ama la arkayo. Marka kulligeen waxaan ku jirnaa kacdoon oo la leeyahay dhinaca wanaagsan iyo waxa wanaagsan bay dadkeen u baahan yihiin. Criticize umay baahna, qalooceeni qaladkeena in nala tuso umay baahna, in dadkii options ay haystaan iyo wax ay arki karaan iyo waxay raaci karaan oo la dhihi karo waxana waa jiraan adigu keebaad qaadanaysaa without ayagoo la dhehaynin waxaan samee. Marka masha Allah, insha Allah, the coming episode or the coming everything aad samaynaysiin iyo waxyaabaha aad qorshooyinka dejin doontiin waan idinla soconnaa. We will be looking forward to the new things that's coming up. Marka, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for taking this
giving us that this time.
time kanana siisid. And I know waxa ugu muhiimsan oo qof aad siin kartid waxa weeyaan waqtigaaga. The waqtiga qofka ku siiya wax walbu ka muhiimsan yahay. And I understand, we both understand, and we appreciate you. Muna.
يعطيك ألف عافية. أنا بعربي وأنا كهلي صح وحنا هلي. Yes. باي والله إن أرت إلهي كشرفه مختارو. I always had a big respect because I'm a fan. But ما أنت يعني وحوم باي سكر لي. I can't say enough. على قولة عرب تبغى شهادتي فيك مجروحة لأنه قفكي مرة هدات follower تاعي and you already أظهرتي time الدعوتي you're gonna be biased. But just you're a humble person. In and out واحد سمعني سدوا واحد مهمة أنك لفتر كيجا هرسد بعد نوتهاي وحبا نوماد حاقن
ودادو نو حاري Mono, you froze adna. wadadu noo xaaray bay ka wadaa.
It gave us the courage, and it made us see it like, okay, this can happen. We can do it. Let's do it in and try it out. So this is you, Dr. Kag, will have a part on what we're doing right now, because if you wouldn't do it, we wouldn't even be confident enough to say, just try it and see how that goes. Marka walaalo aad baad u mahadsantahay. Ilaahay caqligaaga, naftaada, caafimaadkaaga, caruurtaada, reerkaaga iyo waalidkaaga. Ilaahay
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on. Inshallah, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in Minneapolis soon. And I hope that this is a huge success. I'm a fan of your show now, inshallah. And keep it up. It was great to be here, and it was an honor to come on today.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. We love you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
MashaAllah. That was amazing. MashaAllah.
I know. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. I wanted to ask him what is the law, if he give us two things people can take, but I'm asking you that. Two things maanta adigu aad kala baxday ama aad kala hadhay sheekadeenii.
And the two things aan kala dhex baxay labada waxa oo maanta intaan wada hadlayna aan kala dhex baxay waxa weeyaan ubadka dhalinyarada ina lagu xiriiriyo, expose them to anything. Wax walba ina ilmihii maaragtay aysan noqonin inay hal dhinac ama annaga isleenahay way noqon karaan keliya inaysan ahaanin waxa aan ilmaha aan la doonayno ee aan waxyaabo badan albaabo badan tusno meelo badan geyno dad badan ku xiriirino si ay ilmihii u ogaadaan hadday xataa wax ku fakarayeen maybe wax kaleetay dooranayaan markay arkaan. Laakiin haddaanan ilmihii waxyaabo badan aysan arkin ama dad badan oo khibrad leh ama dad badan oo ku jira cilmigii ku dhex jira aysan arag, then seebay ku ogaanayaan waxay doonayaan. Waxaa laga yaabaa waxay doonayaan inaysan ahayn like he said business uu rabay inuu qaato. And look, so sometimes yes,
that's a very important waliba si annagana lagu soo kariyay Soomaali Maxamedow caruurta lagu leeyahay wada engineer noqda iyo wada
yeah
doctor noqda iyo
yeah
wada muhandis and noqda yani
yeah
meel keliya wadan nation dhan meel keliya ma noqon karo
yeah
qof walba ilaahay sibuu u sameeyey calaf
yeah
u qoray ilmaha yari wuxuu jecel yahay
mhm
boqolkiiba konton let's say 50%
mhm
wuxuu jecel yahay wuu u shaqaynayaa wuu u tegayaa wuu ka lahay waxaad adigu laakiin haddaad tahda inankayga waxaan doonaya inuu noqdo dentist oo
yeah
ilmihii yaraaba science aanu shaqo ku lahayn
yeah
you setting your kid up for
for
failure
failure cunugii adiga waxaa ka dhigaysaa inuu wixii ku guulaysan
Mhm.
waayo an adiga oo uu isleeyahay ilaali waalidkii ayuuna meel uga dhacayaa ilmihii waayo ma aha waxay iyaga rabeen aniga always waxaan dhahaa yaa waa qofka oo homeworka samaynayo assignment ka shaqaynayo oo iskuulkii fadhiyo oo macalinkii dhegaysanayo waa iyaga then maxaa rabtaa adiga inaad samaysid and also ma aha maanta waxaa rabtid but waxaa rabtid inaad samaysid mustaqbalka bal ka fakar so iyaga inay really like anaga waa guide garayn karnaa you can
yes
guide them but you cannot make them become
guide
waxa
them
adiga rabtid
guide them waxa weeyaan dariiq u fur
yeah
gadaal
wadadii
leaderka qofka
yeah
lagu leeyahay waa leader he have a
hogaamiye
leadership
yeah
waa hogaamiye
yeah
he lead from behind
yeah gadaal
weligaa qof intaad cunahaasa u qabtid hore kama hogaamisid
yeah
xagga dambe waad ilaalinaysaa waxyaabihii u baahnaa odobadii u baahnaa baad u dhigaysaa
mhm
adaa koriyey adigu naftaada aamin
yeah
hadduu qof ilmahaasi ku yidhaahdo teacher weyn oo lacag ma samaynaysid waa teacher basho saaran lacag u sameynin I don't
yeah
understand
yeah maya nacam
and
exposing them and
lawyer oo ma
guide
tuugtaad waa xaraam ma tuugtaad difaacaysa
yeah
lawyer is not only tuug la
annaga
difaaco
maanta dhib nagu yimaadayaan aadnaa lawyer baan raadsanaa so haddaanan haysanin qof lawyera oo annagina fahmaya oo baahiyadana garanaya then ogow waxaad aaminaysaa oo trust garaynaysaa qof kaleeto narrativekan ka hadlayni waay like we have to make to do our narratives out there soo maaha then hadda dhakhtarka aan haysano oo engineerka aan haysano lawyerka aan haysano businesska aan haysano
guriga dhisayeen haysano kii kaharabada xidhayeen haysano
wax walba haa
there
then
is
markaasay
nothing
dadna
wrong with that
fahmaya oo dhaqankeeni iyo annaga waxaan nahay iyo backgroundkeeni iyo strugglekeeni fahmaya then qofkaasaytu waxa weeyaan way fududahay inuu meesha ka imaanaysa xataa fahmo oo aad wada shaqayn kartiin marka waxay kusoo biishubanaya waxaan kala baxay aniga koleyba and it's not keliya maanta waxaan ogeyn laakiin markii lagu sii xasuusiyo way kusii adkaanaysaa waxa weeyaan exposing ciyaalka dhinacyo badan and guiding waa ilmihii ma adiga gacanta ha qabanin laakiin guide garee like tus waxana waa jiraan adigu laakiin maxaad doonaysaa inaad samaysid and I loved how his parents ay u weydiiyeen ma rabtin inaa u guurno Virginia or Seattle
anaaba yaabay but that's a beautiful way you know
yeah
what that's how it should be that's how it should be anigu imika hadduu imika dad iisoo gashid u baxay tahda waxaasoo sameynaya soo bax waxaan ku leeyahay you didn't even ask me man hawada ka bax
yeah
mada adduunka ee keensaday
maya wallahi
marka caruurteena markan ku sameyno laakiin it's okay
yeah and I think it's also annaga waarid markaan hadlayno waaridka waa ina iyaga laftigooda aysan noqonin anaa waarida saanaan samaynayaa ee ay ogaadaan ilmihii inay yihiin young humans that also part of decisionkaa samaynaysid and effectiga iyo impactiga ku samaynayso the rest of their life aan ogaano before aan tallaabadaas qaadan so adiga su-aashii kugu soo celinaya adiga maxaa maanta kala baxday muna
anigu waxaan kala baxay horta the factors the foundations diinta iyo waalidka inuu joogo aragtidiisa muuqaalkiisa presencekiisa it's a very important factor and I know that for a fact but I cannot address it and anagu markaan ka hadlayno we're not pointing the finger but waa problem communitygeenu haysto waa problem communitygeena ku jirta meel walbo aad tagtid sometimes I want to in a big percentage ma odhanaya dadkoo dhan in a big percentage aabuhu waa absent hooyaduna yes way joogaano way karinayaano noloshu karisiyo cunto ma aha it's how you spending time with that kid sidaad truskiisa u bulgareynaysid sidaad qalbigiisa u dhisaysid sidaad yani markuu ku leeyahay aniga aabahay he want me to bring A's
yeah
usually hooyaday ayaa aabahay want me to bring A's laakiin diinta mar walba uu ka qaadan lahay, that's more important. Ayagii baa diini ahaa, ayagii so inankii
sidii loo koreeyay.
marka ilmihii yaraa guriga iskuulkii oo keliya quraan ma soo xafidaya aanu fahamsanayn. wuxuu arkayaa qoyskii gurigooda joogay ee lamaan iyo hooyadii iyo si soo ixtiraamayaan sida iyagii looga dambeynayo. marka qofkii wuxuu ka soo baxaya waxa weeyaan waa geed dee si wacan loo beeray,
loo beeray loo koreeyay.
maaha geed yani wax yaroo maaragtay annaga carabta waxaan zarc shaytaan yani keligiis ka baxa.
maya.
marka kaa de meeshu ka baxa buu ka baxayaa, but ilaahay baa wada, waxa weeyaan it's like Russian roulette. ma siibay ma la weyday, laakiin haddaba inaan annagu kasoo bilowno wax walba asaaska. That's one thing aniga resonate with me a big, and like I said, and I'm gonna say it again and again, aniga hooyo ay soo korsay. marka hooyaday aniga waxba igamay hakran, laakiin far kali fool ma dhaqdo.
That's right.
She was burned from the inside out because sagaal caruur iyo qof kaliya, it's not bearable. marka ma bariiskii way soo dhigaysaa mise caruur bay korinaysaa, right? laakiin markuu qofku caruur aad dhalaysid mas-uuliyad baa ku saaran gaara. even markay dadku kala tagaan calaf wuu jiraa. ilmahaaga adaa ka mas-uula, kullukum raacin wa kullukum mas'uulun can raaciyati. يعني qof walba mas'uuliyad baa saaran lagu weydiinayo. mas'uuliyaddu maaha kaliya waa aabbahaye ka warhay, waa hooyadaaye, waa jannadaadii, dee jannadaadii واخفض لهما جناح الذل من الرحمة اللهم ارحمهما كما ربياني ايه وشرط وكل حرنتي كما ربياني صغيرة
سيدي أنا صغيرة
كما ربياني صغيرة ووضع الصعدة
سيدي إيسا برباريان absolutely
كما ربياني مركا أنك واحد دونا وانك قادنا عيد قروح ما ندوت هبين دوتتني أنك وشيكي سنة وبحي ان قرآن كما انت دونا انه كقادنيا
افتؤمنون ببعض الكتاب وتكفرون بعض ايات ورن
صدق الله
dad badan nacam waxay doonayaan bay ku dabaqaan oo ka qaataan. marka diinta annaga laftigeena sidaan u adeegsanayno iyo sidaan u isticmaalayno waxyaabo badan bay u baahan tahay in laga saxo, and we're not saying in qofna aan complain garaynayno oo qof aan wax ka sheegayno. annaga laftigeena we're human and we have our own share of struggles. laftigeena maalin walba waxaa ku jirnaa istoosin iyo isa saxid iyo ma dhamaato ilaa aan ka dhimanayno. waxaan rabnaa inaan isa sii toosino, isa sii hagaajino maalinba. waxaan isleenahay ilaahuna gaarsii meel aan dhibaato dhan ka nasahannahay oo ceeb dhan ka nasahannahay oo ilaahay wuxuu naga raba dhan aan samaynayno. taas waxa waaye qof kastoo naga mida ayaa ku haminaya. marka waana inaan ilaahayna aan ka barino oo nidhaahno ilaahow mar walba nagu hagaaji wadada saxda ah. taladana tan saxda ah noogaga hagaaji.
فنولشة انت النول خير الخطاؤون التوابون. انت النول نهي مركت وانقاذنينا وحي وحيابات شرا مركي معنا كوسميا you have to stop and think why this is making sense to me, what is in this. maxaan ka qaadan karaa qofkan wixii aan ay shaqeyneen waan iska daynaya. so that's one of the things that really resonate today with me. is the foundation caruurta in xooga la saaro adduunku wuu socdaa iyagood ka tegaysa waa inaan dhisnaa. so we need to do that and the second thing resonate with me, the resilience. markuu yidhi indha adayga Soomaalida, anigu indha adaygaa u sheegay haddaanan la helay ma arki lahayn maanta.
marka it worked for us. sometimes negative ay noogu shaqaysaa, sometimes positive. So even that in the other is how we use it.
والله لكن أنا ممكن أقول مركو هدلي أنا وحي يقص بودي is just like I was thinking of أنا يعني هل كان صوم مري and I seen that مر بدن I blocked the negative and what people were usually like it's like they project on you وحي أيجو failure كودي بقفكو كودي مركو كله إيميل مجارس هكذا كودم بينيسا. I hear that a lot, especially coming from a poor family, from a single mom, right? So people never stop and say, أدوك أرساق عندنا ما هي said, leave people alone. We don't. هذا الكين اللي مرمر وصل نبرك.
Yes.
So I always used to block.
You can actually, you can kill your words with somebody. People don't think so. That kamo oga. hadalku qofku inuu dili karo aan diliduna maaha inuu qofka dhinto muuqiisa u jeedi kartaa bad qalbigiisa dili kartaa qofka so taas ayaa ka xanuun badan xabad intuu qofku u qaato inuu ku dhufto
أحسن إن قفل الدنيا
taasaa la
مركا
qaatay dhimo laakiin qofka markaa hadallada qaarkid ku dhahdo hadalkaas qofku wuxuu ka dilaa qalbiga qofka hadduu dhintana dee qolof unbaad u jeedaaya qof qalbigiisa dhintaya ku hormaraya marka dadka waa inay fahmaan mararka qaarkood dadku inuu si fiican u fahmaan waayo wallahi mar walbana waan ka hadalnaa ereyga qofka wuu dili karaa waa inaan ka fiirsano ereygaa ku dhahayno qofka markaan hadal iska hadlayno waxaan rabno ku dhahayno sometimes waxaan arkaa dad odhanaya oo sax runtaa sheegaya maxaan sameeyey adoo runta sheegaya baa haddana hadalkaas qofka ku dili kartaa so we have to be compassionate inaan ka imaano position meel oo dhinac naxariis iyo inaan annagii iska fakerno aniga ma rabi lahaa in waxa lagu yidhaahdo ma waxaan rabi lahaa lagula dhaqmo iyo raxmad
يعني الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم في حديث يجري من حسن إسلام المرء تركه ما لا يعنيه runta waxba hay sheegin haddaad mindiga taagaysid waxba hay sheegin marka wixii aan adiga dan kugu jirin waanad waxba ka faa'iidin dambaa ku soo qaad tarki iska dhaaf dar ilaahay u dhaaf because waxa laga yaabo qofkaas inuu kaa naxo oo aad dembi aanad u socon xataa soo jiidatay ama qofka hadduu dhaawac gaadho oo yidhaahdo xasbuna eeg anigoo hadduu imka haddaan u baxay waa dagaalano aydid maantoo dhan I'm happy you know why adduun baad igaga goosatay لكن do not say حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل. You know, it's just like
I'm gonna have to take Ebian to work. It's her time.
Okay.
So I'm gonna let you. I think I'm so gabagabeynayo. I'm gonna take off. I think I'm
no.
You're gonna
no.
do the because
وابد بحضي. Why did you leave? وبح you're not there. What got they?
Muna and commentiyadii qaybtii dhan aan samayn jirnay adaan kaaga sii tagaa maybe waan kusoo noqonaa is right here meeshan geynay
okay
sii dul mar commentiyada insha Allah and I will come back
يلا okay I will okay يلا drive safely
thank you
okay يلا باي باي marka anaa soo haray anaa isla hadlaya imika de marka رحمة how are you doing ما شاء الله إبراهيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته عليكم السلام marka commentiyadiini baan dib ugu noqonayaa I'm not سؤال haddaad qabtaan haddaad if there's subject ama mawduuca doonaysaan aan soo qaadno nala soo qaybsada ama noogu soo hoosta commonka noogu soo qora so we can keep up and bring waxaad ka faa'iidi kartaan ama aad waxaad doonaysaan inaan tawciyad ka sameyno ama aan dib yani idin soo hordhigno insha allah ubax way iga baxsatay this is Dr. Muna marka imika if I know sida bahalka loo celiyo I will go back to the I figured it out wallahi good for me okay so commonkii baan ku noqonayaa anigu wax ma garanayo waaba hatay I can't show looking forward عبد عيسى ددال okay wuu dhaqaaqay hadda anyway maya inaga day marka I think in Mukhtar maanta waxyaabo badan baan ka faa'iidnay anigu shakhsi ahaan waxyaabo badan baan ka faa'iiday and one of the things in podcast kan noo keenay aniga ubax wuxuu ahaa hodan naaliya la yarxamaha yaqfir laha yani waxay ahayd a positive wax wanaagsan oo wanaagun ka hadli jirtay bay ahayd alla yarxamaha markay geeriyootay a lot of us thought of how can we replicate what she did ama in yar kolley qofkii ma bedeli karno laakiin in yar saan usoo qaadanaa waxyaabahay samayn jirtay qof walba dhinaciisa sidoo imka Mukhtaar yidhi and we need more so if you thinking of it if haddaad idea haysatid hey come takale aniga aan markuu yidhi Mukhtar aniga aad ii qancisay waxay ahayd ama ii cajabisay waxay ahayd markuu yidhi laa yugayiru allahu maa biqawmin xataa yugayiru maa bianfusihim aayaddaa u soo qabsaday it is really يعني it resonate because لا يغير إلهي horta kalaamkiisu waa xaq markaad u fiirsatid hadda yani ad comprehend ad weliba dissection ad hoos usii dhaadhadid laa yugayiru yani waa kalaam maqtaci laa yugayiru ilaahay ma bedelayo xaalka bani aadamka xataa yugayiru maa bianfusihim anfusihim waxa weeyaan haddamaha wejigeena iyo socodkeena waa nafs waa soolkaaga what you inside that tells you ilaahay insidekaaga uu og yahay right ma qarin kartid marka waa inuu gudahaaga iyo dushaaduba isqaabila you can't say something and do the other thing because waa lagu yani xataa haddaad adigu isleedahay waad qarsoon tahay carruurtaadii baa ku arkaya reerahaagii baa ku arkaya so they learning from that the double life right marka waa inaad example aan noqona that's one thing resonate with me marka I'm gonna read here xagga hoosaan kasoo bilaabayaa Abayo, when my kids are talking together, they talk too loud and bothering me. What I can do? Thanks. وعرض دائما وقيلية ولا لكن هرت أنكم بتبان and I'm talking about myself. And as kids مركن يريان وقيلة ونانا إلا أمك وحين لقصو كريون you know الوعاء عرفت حدا الإناء ينضخ بما weligii ilmo mu caayi jirin ilmo mu maagi jirin ilmo kumu qaylin jirin madaxu salaax jiro u ducayn jirin right so let's do that caruurteenu waxay u qaylinayaan and they talk loud because you talk loud haddaad adigu talk loud somebody in the family talk loud right marka caruurtii they mimic caruurtu waa cajalad madhan they mimic what they see around laakiin adigu haddaad aayar u hadashid ad levelkooda u soo degtid ad indhaha you know yaa imka u fiirsado haddaad qurbaha joogtid horta carabta marka joogtid usually doesn't happen ama Soomaaliya anu waxaan yani waxyaabahan ka yaabi jiray berigan wadankan soo galay yani ilmihii yaraa levelkiisa u soo degayaan and then they talk and then they give and time out hadduu ilmihii sanad yahay waa 1 minute 2 years waa 2 minutes marka ilmahaga adaa iga ogolaalo la fadhiiso agekooda adaa og and think of what you doing that maybe miyad xanaaqda ma attentionkay kaa rabaan is that the only way ad la hadashido ad soo egtid you know and marka caruurteenu markaasay farq laga qaad noqdaan because attentionkaasi doonin inta aad la hadlaysid la qaylinaysid that's a one-to-one and interaction so just sit down walaalo with them and u samee waqti ay ciyaaraan energygooda meel ay kusoo saaraan and time u samee every time that's one of the things I used to do marka yaryaraan aniga like 8 habeenimo it's time to sleep cunto iyo meedhasho iyo waxaas ma jiraan after 8 waqtiga iyagoo annaga aha dadka waaweyn yani inaan yar nasano ila dad shaqaynayna nahay laakiin subaxdii markaan kacno on time quraacdu waa time naapku waa time so try to sit down walaalo with the kids pay some attention I'm sure wad helaysaa I'm sure wad ogaanaysaa caruurtaada cid kaa taqaana ma jirto walaal ilaahu khayr ka dhig runtii goor kasta waan u duceeyaa gabdhaha maasha allah aamiin ya rabbi alcaalamiin ilaahu ummadaada noo sakhir adduunka waxa ugu wanaagsan inuu qofka dhinta 3 buu ka qaata waladun saalixun yadcuu lahu soo maaha sadaqa jaariya iyo camalkiisa marka camalkeedu way ka tagtay yani the legacy she left behind that everybody is saying and Allah yarhamha ilaahay noo aqbalo ilaahay ayadana ha aqbalo ya rabbi ya kariim ilaahay intaan u duceynayno ee dadku ku xasuusanayaan wanaaga walaalayaal waa sadaqad weeyaan ayada markaad leedihiin Allah yarhamha ma sha Allah Allah yarhamha wa yaghfir lahu yarham jamiic المسلمين يرحم جميع أموات المسلمين قول آمين يا رب العالمين الله كبرك آمين يا رب العالمين. You know walaalo horta and yes thank you and وحويا النصيحة أنا ديدين and إلهي الله يهديني ويهديك إن شاء الله ويهدي الجميع and قف والبا walaalo tiisu la dagaalamaya marka إلهي أنا صوت هنوني آمين يدعي دعاء كود إن شاء الله إلهي هيك أقبل إن شاء الله. الله يرحمها الله يرحمها اغفر لها يا رب وسع لها بقبرها يا رب يا كريم. اللهم أبايا when my kids are talking yeah you talk to me. Let's see here. لا لرنتي وحي يربا كل شوقة وأنا هلي أنت كليا أصدق اللي أنت أنك ويني أنك مركن عرضت سوكرين مركن يريرين أيوب أنا كدب أن community لنا قليه مركن لها أنا أقبل أنك بصدق إنه تهي ووقت جيجي أنك قلني وأنا هوبي أنك أن you know it make us happy when we do this when we connect with people by when my I saw that when let's see mid walba laba jeer buu kusoo qoraya. My question is why did choose English to present the topic rather than Somali? I mean we understand Somali language more. You know Ahmed Mohamedo walaalo I hear you loud and clear. Adigu you talking perfect English, you talking from a privilege. Some of us walaalo horta waxa wanaagsan qofka bani aadamka walaalkaya shaqadu soo qabtay iyo dadaalku soo dadaalay in loo qadaro hatta haddaan Soomaali nahay waxaan ku dhegnaa Soomaali ku hadal. What if I don't know the Somali walaalo? What if inaad adigu aniga مثلا adiga dhigaysid qof aana yani qadarin ba lahayn because afkii Soomaaliga sad adigu u taqaanid you talking from a privilege point. Ilaahay baa afka ku baray oo meel aad ka barato oo dadka ay kugu baraan aad joogtay but I did not have that chance. So I try my best. Soomaaliga inta ka garanayo iyo intan anigu isbaray hadda eeg ana intan isbaray ama dadka imanaya waa caruur halkan ku koray oo ku dhashay laga yaabo walaalo inaanay helin fursadaada. Marka waxa wanaagsan mar walba inaad humble noqoto oo dadka qof walba walaalkaya 79 cudur baa la siiyaa 70 cudur baa in walaalka cudurdaar loo samaysid. Marka anaku taa waan la soo boodnaa and sometimes horta aniga doesn't affect me but I hear it a lot. qofkii iyo doonaya inuu community wax u qabto waa la cabudnay. af Soomaaligu afkan Ilaahay baa sameeyay, Ingiriisiga Ilaahay baa sameeyay, Carabiga Ilaahay baa sameeyay, Chinese whatever. qofku wuxuu doonaya isagu inuu ku dadaalo oo ku shaqeeyo aanu hambaleyno gacantaan u qabano. Anigu that's what I believe. Yes we are a proud people and dhaqankeena waan jecelnahay afkeena waan jecelnahay obviously waan jecelnahay annako aana arag oona ku soo korin ayaan la soo taaganahay oo annako isbarnay. Marka intaas aniga to me it's enough to say I'm Somali enough. I am enough. inta ka badan wallahi waxa la yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. That's all I can do wallahi. Again Ibrahim Hassan waan ku raacsanay in ragga Soomaaliyeed kuwa badani ay absentiin hatta haddii uu reerka wada joogo. That's so true. Yani it's unfortunate laakiin khalad iyagu ay leeyihiin maaha. Again waanan ka fogaana farta la fiiqayo khalad iyagu ay leeyihiin because community-gii waa wixii la baray. Inamadeena horta anu mar walba waxaan raahdaa inamada Soomaaliyeed iyo hablaha Soomaaliyeed isku si looma soo kariyo isku chance lama siiyo. hablaha mas'uuliyad baa la saaraa, hablaha waa la aaminaa, hablaha reerka waxbay u qabtaan oo ay ka qabtaan intay yar yihiin. Inamada laakiin fadhigaa wax loogu keenaa marka waa qofkeed curyaamisay moogta. marka isaga saa loogu soo caawinay aabihiina uu shaqo tago markuu shaqo tago shaqada ka soo waxaana u fadhiisto ama anigu meeshan ka turub iyo dhaadhuu iyo dumna la ciyaari jiro. Soomaaliyana dadka Soomaali jooga ka sheekeyn kara. But when I went for a visit, God's stand was everywhere. dumarna leenka uma taagna, raggun baa taagna. yaanyada dumar baa iibinaya, caruurta iskuulka dumar baa geenaya, meel walba oo dadka cararaya waa dumar. Marka I'm not saying ragoo dhan, I'm not saying, waxaan arkay aabbayaal badan oo carurahooda walahi dhabarka ku sita, maasha Allah, ilaahay dii barakeeyo. But we want more, we want more. intaa ka badan baan doonaynaa, you know, ilaahay wax walba waa weydiisanaynaa, intaa ka badan ayaan doonaynaa, iskuma yaraynayno. Inshallah, tabarakallah. Typically Somali mom, they are always got to black talent. I have always, yeah, I want to share this one. They, Amina, how are you, Walalo? And they are always, yeah, belittling the black talent. I have always fought for my sons. MashaAllah, let's take that. Fought for your son. يعني wax ilmahaaga wad u soo istaagtay, wad u advocate garaysay, xaqoodii baad ka hadashay. You were involved. meel walba aan joognaa, meel walba, ama aad yaraatid ama sheekaan idinka sheekeynaya. Soomaalidana sheekooyinkaan jecelnahay. And waxaan iskuulkan, you know, I'm a nurse for almost 13 years by profession. Halkaasaan kasoo bilaabay for 13 years. And markaan galay graduate schoolka, gabadh baa daba dhigatay. gabadha laftarkeedu hadda ma aha mid wadankan u dhalato ajadadee aabaheed iyo hooyadeed waxa way raashin afkii bay ku hadlaa wali, waa first generation, right? gabadhii waxay ahayd professor, waxay dhigaysay statistics, wali waxa yani class weyn may dhigin. way daba dhigatay, warqad baan dhiibaa, macallin baan dhiibaa, waxaan arkay iyadoo email iga soo diraysa, she's not even the one who teaching me, man. Waatan ka yaabay. I was like, manaa waalan بعدين بلاقيه. But we always doubt ourselves. We always وحنا هبود نسيف لبود هنقول no, don't be the black angry woman, right? Once كان داف أيضا لو واحد أركت داف كيجي iyo waraaqahaygiiyo markay ay gu soo celiyeen, marka waa professor and meesha haysta iyo iyadoo assistantkiisii waxa weeyaan professor and assistant professor. markii dambe baan fahmay, so she's in his class, help inay saxsaxdo wax, iyo classkan ay cover garaysay statistic. markaasi way daba dhigtay. marka anigu what did I start? marka warqad qoro, writing centerkan ku xiriiray and macallimad ingiriisiga dhigta la saaxiibay. markan dhameeyo my assignment, I usually send it to her and then she correct, you know, up to 3 times. way iga yaab jirtay gabadhaasi, iga harbay oran jirtay, why you send it 3 times? I already corrected it for you. markaas igu soo celisa, aan ku celiya, markan hagaajiyo waxay igu tahay ku celiya, ku just give me. markaas igu tahay, you know what, if this has come to me, this is a grade I'm going to give you, go ahead. xere af buuxan bay igu tiri, I don't know even how you made it. How did you cut it? How did you get in this? How did you make the cut off? Wallahi dhagahayga way u qaadan waayeen. I was like, what do you mean, how did I make a cut off? Because I could, how did you make it here? How did you even pass? And warqadana soo qortay, it's not a graduate level. marka aniguna ilan waan ogayo, markii hore baan kasii shakiyey. waxaan ku yidhi, you know what, I'm not gonna argue with you. I'm gonna take this higher, a step higher. marka waan tegay and I filed a complaint. professorka la shaqaysa soo booday, wuxuu igu yidhi, and you know, your English is not good, blah blah blah. marka isaga waan ka boodo. markuu intaa yidhi, marka waxaan ogaaday in labadooda socdaan. diinkii baan u tegay, waraaqahay gabadhan u soo celinayay, all the emails and the corrections ayaan u geeyey. so 3 jeer baan ku celiyay. ilaahay baa igu yidhi, just protect yourself. waa doctorate-kan programkaasaan ku jiray. markaan u geeyey diinkii, he couldn't even waxa uu odhan kari waayay, because not only waraqadii ay igu soo dhacsay tiri tani maaha code, I don't even know how you make. marka anaa hoos la dhigay so I can give up and leave, right? marka isaga u geeyay the investigation bay noqotay labadiiba they backed off lianno may arag waxay anagu waan iska soconaa waan qaadanaa dulmiga waan dhaqaaqnaa and I'm sure they did it before because how confident ay adoo qof la hadlayo qof kale soo boodo laakiin markan u tegay diinkii I think they did not expect it from me can you imagine keediina wallahi labadiiba I think B plus iyo A minus inaan ku kala qaado maalintii faraha laga qaado because I advocated to myself and I was like I didn't do anything ha igu yidhaahdo isagu you're not the level and I graduated with 3.89 GPA wallahi inaana iga faanayn laakiin waxaad ogaataa annagoo waaweynoo saasaa lagu cadaadinay imagine when you ilmo yar aad gacanta u gelsataada waa macallin kuwan ka nimi animka halkan iskuullada kusoo bartay dee macallimiinta iyadu ayagaaba dalcag baa lagu siinayo different bay ahayd yani imka haddaan macallimadeeda indhaha ku taago iga soo ishkatadooda way garaaci jirtay right you know it's different environment the systemica jooga ajaanib baa ku dhigaya masaari baa noo dhigi jirta falastiin yemeniyiin suuriyiin marka ayagiiba ajaaniba so they will not go out of their way to do it but annakii halkan madowgii systemic racismkii afkii aanan garanayn hooyooyinkii abooyinkii ka baqaya because we were raised to be scared of authority marka ilmahaaga yar mar walba dhageyso ilmahaaga yar mar walba dhageyso isagaad soo koris isagaa taqaanay ilaa maalinta aad keentay adduunkanu ku hortaag saad qof uga raacdaa you supposed to protect marka ilmihii yaraa marka aduu qof kale usoo raacdid eeg halkii uu sheegayay inankimka leedahay mukhtaar markuu lahaa guriga layga soo kobciyo layga soo saborgareeyo layga soo adkeeyo taasaa ka mid ah caruurtiina dhageysta xataa haddaad is leedahay again seeflabooda soomaalidu aad bay u isticmaasho ilmahaaga dhageyso wixii isaga maslaxadiisa mar walba isaga ha ku soo noqono ilaa aad soo hubsatid ay wax kale dee jiraan then you sit down and say siday wax u dhaceen this is what I found out marka ilmihii can understand that you listened you did your homework you believed him or her and what u fadhiistay and you came back waxaad ilmahaagii tusaysaa there is nothing above you qof kaa sarreeya adduunkani ma jiro adiga والدنيا توقف نقطة على آخر السطر لكن markii hooyadii tiraahdo alla la siiqaadku u qaylinaya uun u ducee allah yahdii janno gelow ilaahay nuurka kuu badi ilaahay yani anag Soomaaliya ma carfay yani ilaahay ummadiisa ku sakhir ilaahay baabada ku fur u ducee caruurtiina naxariistaas adag ka baranaya hadhow markaan daa noqono ayaguna way noo duceynayaan oo ku imanayaan haddaad madaxa u salaaxdid wallahi ku imanayaan madaxay ku salaaxeen laakiin haddaan qaylino wah ilmihii yaraa albaabka ka boodaya hadhowna waxaan yaabana waxaan odhanaa caruurtii maxay ugu diray adiguba qof hadduu 2 jeer kuu qayliyo I remember anigu berigay markay waan dhuuman jiray wallahi alcadiim yani hareerahan geli jiray si aanan wax laygu dirin I make sure inaana anoo meel fadhiya aanay hooyaday arag because there is a chores coming maxaa ku fadhiisay orada waxaa soo qabo orada wax soo qabo so I have to act like I'm busy we need to change that we need to change it caruurtiina dhageysta typically horta we all typical moms wallahi inta jeera aan isku qabanay annakoo yani annakoo like ana wala maxaa kaasi why ilmaha yar saa ula hadlaysaa haddana laakiin waxaan ogahay waa wixii laygu soo koriyey waa wixii anigu aan u bartay ilaa noloshaydii half of my life and actually half of my life waxay ahayd half of my life waxay ahayd qaylada iyo dagaal iyo you know so qofku wuxuu yaqaanin buu ku noqonayaa markaan caruurta ilaalino أنا كمبيوتر كان والله كنت وخلي إلهي وحل فرورة محبة بركو جاي أهلي برورو محبة بركو جاي محولي فضول شي باني قال كريكت والله ما سؤال لدنا أنت أنك جوابي كري والله وأنك جوابنا السامحة أنك نسامحها إن شاء الله هرتا consistency إنكم نقول هرتا نصيحة ونعكسن بوليسية that we be here all the time ده البودكاست وحو كفرني هاي clubhouse too جمعها هبينكي clubhouse جمعة أول بهبينكي تضبطي بركة تلاوة القرآن كالبراء الشيخ لا شيخ ما الأستاذ أو معلم عبد الحكيم from Minnesota نوريغا all over the world baa laga soo galaa axadda subaxdii 10 subaxnimo waxaa inoo furaa sheekh mustafa salaasadana imaam yuusuf axad walbana waxaan leenahay every sunday berri nagala soo qayb gala kowda duhurnimo clubhouse Seattle time waxaa jira waxaan furnima waa wiigii saddexaad waxaan furnay waxa la yidhahdo annaka iyo la yidhaahdo club la yidhahdo reading by myself oo buugaga lagu akhriyo ingiriisi iyo soomaaliyaba iyo dadaal podcast waxaan furnay waxa la yidhahdo Somali women speak it's a healing space waa meel aan ku sheekaysano dumar ahaan waa safe space qayli ma jirto cay ma jirto judging ma jiro hadal lagugu xidhayaa ma jiro kaalay nagala soo qayb gala it's a beautiful space it's a healing space sheekooyinka markaad maqashid walaalahaa soo mareen ama experience-kooda adigaba waxbaa kuu soo kordhaya qalbigaa kuu qaboobaya community aan dhisanay ilaa 110 baan gaarnay I think last week markaa nagala soo qayb gala aad baad u mahadsantiin sida qurux badan ee noo dhegaysateen we love you always wanaaga ha lagu dheeraado xumaatidana ha laga hadho haddaad xanaaqdin waxay والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس قفك عردي سقطت iyo qofka dadka iska cafiyo haddaanad cafiyi karin xataa ka dhaqaaq waayo qofkii haddaad qaylo yacay adigii baa soo dejiyey moralkaagii iyo enerjigaagii waa negative daaqadaadii buu qaatay enerjigaagii buu qaatay waxyaabahaasoo kale ka weynaada ka socda let's be kind to each other walaalayaal I love you wax ma sugi karayo waa inaynoo ahaato maaha sabtida dambe insha allah sabtida ku xigta iyo mawduuc xiisa leh iyo guest xiisa leh insha allah love you all thank you bye